We open on a brutal battlefield where Damian is at the absolute end of his rope, limping over the lifeless bodies of his allies. He'd warned them from the very start that this insane mission was practically a suicide run. As a centurion in the Baroque kingdom's punitive force, Damian couldn't fathom how 100 men were supposed to defeat 2,000 enemies. He fought with every ounce of strength, burning through his last drop of energy just to survive. Corpses piled up, and pure despair completely swallowed the battlefield. Damian watched his comrades fall lifelessly, completely powerless to save even one. Sure, the military operation itself was deemed a success, but he could only offer bitter apologies to the friends he lost. He blamed himself brutally, thinking that if he had just been a bit stronger, he would have kept everyone alive. Damian punches the dirt in sheer frustration, finally realizing his battered body simply can't take another step. He can feel it. Death is standing right over him. A second later, he collapses onto the cold ground. Waiting for death, countless bitter regrets and dark memories start racing through his head. Damian couldn't help but think how different life would be if he'd joined the army long before turning 25. Frustrated, he begs desperately for another chance at fate. He genuinely wished he'd been strong enough to dominate the battlefield alongside his true brothers in arms. But in his final moments, only cold, suffocating darkness welcomed him. His breath fades, and he finally loses his life on that nameless field. But hold on, because he was dead certain his tragic story ended right there. But instead, he suddenly snaps awake in his past body. Incredibly, he has regressed back in time to exactly 17 years before the tragedy. Staring down at his young hands, Damian finally accepts this unbelievable reality. He immediately presses his hand against his stomach to check his mana core, a warrior's most crucial asset. In this timeline, his core is completely healthy, meaning he can actually master mana this time. Damian bitterly remembers how his greedy uncle robbed him of his inheritance in his past life, forcing him to survive on scraps in dark, dirty alleys. Left with nothing by his so-called guardian, Damian was framed for a gang leader's crimes and thrown straight into a high-security prison. Behind those bars, he was drafted by force and dragged straight onto the battlefield, assuming his life was effectively over. Damian fully expected to die a nameless dog's death. But destiny had a completely different path lined up for him. Against all odds, he survived the meat grinder and climbed the ranks to become a respected centurion. Despite surviving absolute hell in his previous life, he feels things actually ended up decent enough. Suddenly, a faint metallic sound echoes. He instantly realizes someone is trying to slip into his room under the cover of night. Keeping dead silent, he slowly reaches for a sharp dagger. As the shadow quietly nudges the door open, Damian lunges forward, catching the targets completely off guard. He stabs the first intruder, forcing a muffled shriek of pain from his throat. Damian curses that his blade only sank halfway into the target. Seeing this, the second assassin immediately charges at him, but Damian sidesteps the desperate slash with total ease. The attacker lunges again with a sharp blade, but Damian ducks low, dodging the steel before brutally driving his own dagger deep into the guy's thigh. Looking down at his blood-stained weapon, he wonders who could have ordered this sudden midnight hit. Both intruders writhe on the floor, groaning in agony as blood pools beneath them. Damian grabs one of the bleeding men by the collar, demanding to know who set up this ambush. Flashing a terrifying, cold glare, he asks them point-blank if his uncle was the mastermind behind this attack. Losing his patience entirely, he digs the blade deeper into his captive, demanding they spit out the truth right now. A figure emerges from the shadows, calling Damian a monster. The man is none other than Muckman, a face Damian recognizes instantly. The moment he sees him, Damian realizes this whole setup is way worse than he first guessed. Damian instantly finishes off the interrogated target, calmly muttering to himself that things are playing out in quite an interesting way. He clearly remembers being dragged like a dog through the dirty city streets by ruthless thugs 17 years ago. He tried to run and slip into the pitch-black back alleys, but those bastards tracked him down in seconds. The mercenaries beat him half to death, showing zero mercy. Tied up, helpless, and drowning in tears, he couldn't comprehend why his own family would let this happen. But now, connecting the dots, Damian realizes his kidnapping was actively planned by his own uncle. Gripping his dagger with absolute, cold determination, he is fully prepared to rewrite his tragic destiny and butcher every last one of them. With the two bleeding assassins dealt with, he shifts his icy gaze entirely onto Muckman. Damian feels a quiet, white-hot rage, confirming that his uncle was sick enough to sell his own blood to low-life thugs. Muckman stares back at the kid with a dark, calculating look, finally realizing this hit isn't going to be easy. Muckman wastes zero time. He draws his blade and charges Damian, aiming to end him in one swing, but Damian barely dodges by a hair. It is absolute godlike battle reflexes at work. Absolutely stunned. Muckman simply can't believe a mere child dodged his strike so effortlessly. Just a smirk. Damian stares back, wondering if his enemy was always this pathetic. Muckman unleashes a flurry of rapid strikes, but Damian calmly slips past every single one of them. We find out he can predict enemy movements, just from surviving countless brutal, life-and-death battles. He can read his opponent's gaze perfectly, knowing the exact direction the man plans to step. He even reads the tilt of the waist and the shoulder movements before the weapon even begins to swing. Every movement points right to the strike zone. Annoyed that he cannot touch the kid, Muckman begins to lose his mind in a fit of absolute rage, pure fury. The warrior screams and attacks recklessly. But to Damian, these wild swings are way too obvious. He spots an opening in Muckman's sloppy guard and lands a lightning-fast, precise counterstrike. Muckman groans in pain as his sword goes flying through the air and clatters to the ground, leaving him entirely defenseless. Damian seizes the moment, pinning Muckman to the floor once and for all to seal his flawless victory. Pure desperation, Muckman screams in rage, completely overpowered by a mere child. He collapses to the cold floor, groaning in pain and helpless against Damian's monstrous strength. Muckman trembles with raw fear, unable to comprehend this child's insane power, while Damian points his dagger firmly to corner him completely. He stammers in sheer terror, unable to believe a 13-year-old kid could do this. Damian glares down coldly, asking if he wants to know how his attacks were stopped. He calmly explains that he can predict and see every single strike just by watching his arm move. The intruder finds this explanation totally absurd and grows even more terrified. Damian simply replies that his belief does not matter, because it is the plain truth. The intruder tries to threaten him, saying this won't end well if the others find out what happened. Damian coldly counters, reminding the man that he is going to die right here, so he won't be telling anyone a single thing. Damian pressures him to play smart and confess right now, was it Parker who sent him? Dead silence. The assassin is totally cornered by the threat. Damian warns him to answer properly, unless he wants to spend the rest of his life permanently disabled. The man wonders in sheer horror how a 13-year-old child has such a killer gaze, and honestly, those glowing red eyes prove he is not playing. The intruder finally breaks, confessing that Parker planned everything, so Damian temporarily decides to spare his miserable life. A sudden, blinding flash. A burst of light erupts right in front of his eyes. He desperately grabs his own neck, as blood begins to spray uncontrollably in every direction. Damian calmly turns around and begins to walk away as the lifeless body collapses to the floor. Damian notes that he needs to clean up this entire mess before leaving. He reflects on a major lesson from his past life, which is to always avoid making unnecessary enemies. But he also knows exactly how to handle it if he inevitably ends up making an enemy anyway. The only real solution in those situations is to completely crush them, leaving absolutely zero loose ends. Meanwhile, Uncle Parker's massive mansion sits completely silent in the dark forest. Checking his pocket watch, the hooded mercenary figures the job should be finished by now. Hearing footsteps approach, he assures Parker that he will handle this person himself. The killer chuckles, noting that the uncle must have been insanely angry to hire professionals just for a little kid. Parker slams his hand on the desk, red-faced with rage over being humiliated and outsmarted by his own nephew. The mercenary tells Parker to stay patient, warning him not to even think about cutting his pay over this delay. A sharp knock. The sudden sound shatters the room's silence, leaving them both quite intrigued. As the mercenary goes to open it, he remarks that the kid has arrived, while Parker just wants him dead immediately. Parker's plan is simple: quickly wrap up the insurance paperwork, then permanently get rid of Damian once and for all. An instant ambush. The mercenary opens the door, only to be blasted by a sudden attack. Damian leaps from the dark, thrusting a combat spear straight toward the enemy's chest. Parker lets out a terrified shriek, and the mercenary instantly realizes that the first team completely failed their mission. Damian calmly steps inside with his spear, mocking the mercenary as a mere lapdog. The hooded man does not appreciate the insult, glaring back with a deadly stare. Damian continues to mock him, calling him a loyal lapdog to his pig of an uncle. But the mercenary just bursts out laughing. The mercenary calmly turns to Parker, using a pretty mocking tone to renegotiate the job. He warns that the price just tripled, leaving Parker completely desperate and shaking like a leaf. Drawing his sword, the mercenary claims the hike is totally fair since he lost so many men. He points to the blood dripping from Damian's spear tip to prove just how dangerous the kid is. The mercenary admits things went sideways because of the boy's insane, unexpected strength. Parker sweats buckets, whining that paying 3 times the original amount is basically highway robbery. He even threatens to walk away right now, which immediately has the desperate uncle begging him to wait. The hooded man looks sideways at Damian, trying to gauge his actual combat power. Just look at this. Damian lets out an insanely terrifying aura, making Parker shriek in horror. Terrified, Parker agrees to triple the pay, knowing he is dead meat if the mercenary abandons him. The mercenary smirks, highly victorious, declaring that their little negotiation is officially a wrap. Montal says coldly that he does not care about his dead men because to him, it is just business. Damian, however, admits he cares a lot because selfish people like them completely ruined his past life. He remembers spending half of his previous life running away, rotting like trash in dark alleys. During that long suffering, he ruined his own honor, losing all hope of becoming strong. With a determined look, Damian warns that there is absolutely no way he will spare their lives. They can just go ahead and die. Montal charges in a total rage, calling Damian an arrogant brat while throwing a lightning-fast sword strike. The mercenary's desperate attack misses completely, barely brushing past the boy's legs. Montal panics when he realizes that Damian easily dodged and is already counterattacking his legs. The mercenary realizes the kid moves like an absolute veteran, not some normal child. The two clash instantly, and the loud ring of colliding steel echoes intensely through the massive room. Damian casually dodges every fast strike from Montal, keeping the entire fight under total control. Montal raises his arm to block his face, but that leaves his lower body completely wide open. Damian immediately takes advantage of the gap, landing a sharp blow that cuts the man's thigh. Even bleeding, Montal swings a desperate counterattack, throwing every last bit of strength he has. With incredible, fluid speed, Damian dodges the side slash with an unshakable expression. Montal screams that this next blow is the real one, hoping to catch the boy off guard. But check this out, the mercenary's blade hits absolutely nothing once again. Damian already knew the right-handed strike would be the real attack and sidesteps it with ease. He slides behind Montal, landing a brutal strike that makes the man shriek in pain. Taking a calm breath, the boy coldly remarks that he already knew exactly how he would move. Gritting his teeth, the mercenary curses Damian in absolute fury, refusing to let himself be humiliated like this, and completely consumed by hatred and desperation. He screams that he will slaughter the kid, charging forward for one final attack. His eyes widen in complete shock as he realizes he has just made his final, fatal mistake. Montal collapses heavily to the cold floor, bleeding out, letting out his last painful groans before dying. Damian looks down at the body, noting that even if this guy was stronger than Muckman, to Damian, he was still just trash. He rests the spear on his shoulder, turning toward his final piece of unfinished business. Parker drops straight to his knees, weeping in terror, desperately begging Damian to listen to him. Completely ignoring the pathetic begging, the boy keeps walking forward, his footsteps echoing in the room. Parker goes into a full panic, waving his arms, begging his nephew to stay away from him. A blood-curdling scream echoes inside the quiet mansion, marking the absolute end of that pathetic threat. Later on, the notary treats Damian with extreme respect, confirming the deposit of a massive fortune into his bank. The boy holds the financial documents, satisfied to finally have his parents' inheritance secured. The notary says goodbye. Thanking him for his business, the notary says goodbye while Damian gets ready to leave. Curious, he politely asks where he plans to go next. He points out that the carriage outside seems quite prepared for a rather long trip. Damian calmly replies that he is joining the army, which leaves the notary completely speechless. He confirms it, noting there are a few very important people he needs to find in this lifetime. Watching the scenery fly by the window, the boy keeps his mind completely locked on his goals. He smiles, thinking of his old comrades and knowing the military is the only place he truly belongs. Besides, in 5 years, a massive war will break out, forcing every young man to be drafted anyway. A dark era of unavoidable war is creeping closer. No one escapes it, not a single soul. Luckily, since he successfully avoided that past disaster, his mana core is completely intact and healthy. He decides it is far better to volunteer now while he is young instead of waiting until he turns 25. His plan is to head straight to the capital, spend a week training his mana, and then enter the training camp. He is dead set on doing things differently this time. No more being a helpless victim. Instead of being controlled by circumstances, Damian is ready to rule his own era. Fast forward 1 week, and we finally see Damian arriving at the kingdom's imposing military center. Down in the training yard, a sudden, extremely violent spear strike kicks up a massive cloud of thick dust, leaving the other recruits watching in absolute shock. A kid fighting with such extreme mastery? Impossible. But Damian just wipes his sweat with a focused look, ready to show the entire world what a true elite centurion is capable of. Damian looks at his bruised hands. Too weak. This young body still desperately needs some tight bandages. These young hands lack the rough calluses and stiffness he earned from years of endless battles. Just then, an army instructor walks up, asking if the kid is here for training. The instructor praises Damian's spear technique, asking where he learned such refined martial arts. Ironically, it is just the standard style among soldiers, hilariously known as the kingdom's greatest spear art. Damian lies. He claims his late father taught him, prompting the instructor to apologize for bringing up a sensitive topic. The boy adds that he takes pride in following his father's example, getting his application instantly approved. The flustered instructor tries to stammer out a quick response to clear up the awkward misunderstanding. Clearing his throat to change the subject, he asks the recruit for his name. His grip is firm. Damian introduces himself in an imposing, official manner. The examiner writes down his name and genuinely wishes Damian the best of luck on his training journey. Damian politely thanks him, watching the officer head up the stairs. A moment later, Damian begins focusing a strong surge of glowing purple mana straight into his hands. Feeling the energy flow again, he marvels at finally reliving that old sensation of power. Mana manipulation works. Damian smiles in satisfaction, confirming his power in this new life. He uses the Delfted family cultivation method, famous in his future for being extremely demanding yet efficient. Back then, with his core shattered, he memorized this complex method hoping for a miracle. His subordinates used to tease him, asking why the boss insisted on memorizing techniques without any mana. He always answered their jokes with a serious look, pretending to be deeply annoyed. All that effort and those old jokes finally paid off, and now he just needs to pass this test. A deep breath. He keeps his gaze intensely focused on the challenges ahead. As he walks, Damian remembers that a specific legendary warrior actually started out in this exact spot, and honestly, wouldn't you want to know how that legend is doing right now? The massive training field is packed with new candidates eager for the practical exams. The first physical admission test simply consists of lifting a massive, heavy boulder off the ground. Hoisting over 60 pounds directly above your head is the perfect way to weed out rookies. Damian hoists the boulder without breaking a single sweat, and the examiner shouts, announcing his instant passing grade. He lets out a faint smile. With the mana he possesses, this heavy rock is not even a challenge. With Phase 1 finished, the remaining candidates gather to hear instructions for the next test. The official examiner steps up onto the main platform and loudly announces the start of Phase 2. It is a brutal long run, and everyone must finish in under 90 minutes. Shoving is allowed. The examiner warns that bumps between competitors are totally fine. Damian deduces that the instructors must be disguised among them to make sure nobody cheats. The officer adds a warning that stepping outside the marked track results in instant disqualification. Instead of getting tense over the strict rules, Damian just smiles confidently, finding it pretty entertaining. The long red track stretches across the open field, marking their exact running path. While he stretches, a blonde kid his age approaches, saying they are in the same group, and openly admits he has been watching Damian's movements for quite some time. Damon gets highly suspicious, and suddenly realizes this young face triggers a very familiar memory. With a playful smile, the blonde boy asks if he really has no idea why everyone is staring. Leaning in closer, he quietly whispers that he caught Damon secretly channeling his internal mana. He points out that ordinary commoners don't get to use mana unless some wealthy noble is backing them. Damon's eyes go wide as he finally recognizes this living legend, while the boy casually asks for his name. The boy cheerfully introduces himself as Apple, leaving Damon completely stunned to hear that famous name. Apple is a true commoner legend, having risen to become a respected general and count by age 30. The legendary commoner admits he was pretty bored with no one his age around, so he suggests they both go all out during the exam. Damon accepts the friendly handshake, knowing it's a terrible idea to make an enemy of someone this powerful. The examiner raises his megaphone, calling everyone to the starting line. Once the signal blasts, a massive horde of recruits charges forward at full speed, kicking up a storm of dust. Damon keeps a highly balanced rhythm, effortlessly matching a steady pace with Apple in the lead pack. Wait for it right at the start. The crowd is utterly shocked by what Damon is pulling off. Up ahead is the wall of wailing, the exam's true roadblock, Apple warns. He suggests their best play is to simply match the group's pace, then blast past everyone at the very end. But Damon just sprints right to the front, claiming a cautious style doesn't suit him at all. Apple's jaw completely drops as he witnesses his new friend reach an absolutely insane speed. Meanwhile, the rest of the recruits pace themselves slowly, trying to save their energy for the final stretch. One candidate hears incredibly fast footsteps closing in from behind and turns around, totally confused. He is totally stunned to see Damon charging past like a madman, muttering that the guy is a complete maniac. An undercover instructor grins, noting they have got a rather feisty rookie taking the test this year. A massive recruit decides to slam Damon with his heavy shoulders, promising himself not to break the kid too badly. You have got to love this moment. Damon just glides right past with a quick tap, politely saying, "Excuse me." The big guy completely loses his footing and has absolutely no clue how he got past. Damon keeps blasting down the track with unbelievable speed, leaving only a trail of thick dust behind. High-ranking officers desperately shout, ordering their instructors to stop him at all costs. Damon knows these instructors are definitely highly skilled, but he can breeze past them without any issue. He figures that, at the end of the day, they are only basic training camp instructors. The other competitors are completely outraged by his boldness, but Apple simply laughs at the scene. Fired up by his brand new friend's unbelievable determination, Apple decides there's no way he can afford to fall behind. He suddenly accelerates, surging right into the front pack. Swept up by this crazy momentum, the other recruits completely abandon their cautious pacing and start sprinting as well. The entire yard descends into absolute chaos, leaving the instructors completely speechless. Quite a few candidates end up collapsing flat on the grass, entirely worn out by this brutal pace. Watching from above, the high-ranking officers note that this year's energy is completely unprecedented. One guard suggests deploying even more instructors to bring these rowdy young men back in line. However, the commander holds them back, with instructor Raymond noting that adapting to chaos is part of evaluating their actual skills. Meanwhile, Damon continues to drive forward, maintaining his highly aggressive pace lap after lap. Raymond cracks a subtle, proud smile, knowing his eyes hadn't played tricks on him about Damon's raw talent. Raymond clearly sees how the kid's crazy boldness acted like fuel, sparking a fire in everyone else. He knows true leaders are the ones who can ignite that spark. Drenched in sweat and breathing hard, Damon realizes he is finally pushing through the penultimate lap of this brutal test. Gathering every ounce of his remaining strength, he locks in for the 30th and final lap. Suddenly, Apple pulls right up next to him, calling out with a very cheerful, friendly grin. Apple remarks that his buddy still has tons of stamina, chuckling as he asks if he orchestrated this massive scene. Gesturing toward the collapsed candidates, he jokes they would both be lying there too if not for their mana. Damon flashes a quick smirk, noting there's really no point in holding back a massive advantage when you've got one. Apple laughs out loud at the practical answer, fully deciding that Damon is one highly interesting guy. Damon throws back a smile as the two of them cross the red finish line together. The examiner officially declares both of them passed, leaving the new duo quite satisfied with their run. Inside a fancy military office, a voice remarks that a pretty interesting boy just joined their outpost. The assistant quickly nods, reporting that according to instructor Raymond, this prodigy is only 13 years old. The commander leans forward, resting his hands on his desk, noting that if strict Raymond actually showed interest, there must be something special there. He admits this unusual situation has sparked quite a bit of curiosity about the new recruit. Standing tall with an imposing gaze, the eye-patch-wearing commander asks what the young man's name was again. Meanwhile, over in the outer courtyard, the recruits are buzzing with excitement and really, who can blame them? Over on the dirt, a few failed candidates cry over their bad luck, sobbing about how incredibly weak they are. While others are loudly cheering their success, Damian just watches, wondering if passing this test is actually worth all that joy. In his memories of the future, the military draft is mandatory, and everyone does absolutely anything to escape it. He sighs, thinking about how peaceful things are right now, when suddenly, Apple calls out his name from behind. Apple approaches with a cheerful wave, congratulating him and celebrating the fact that they are officially comrades now. Damian asks if he passed too, and Apple happily nods, saying he saw Damian's name on the official roster. Apple points in total shock to the top of the board, where Damian's name sits at rank number 1 at only 13. He says he is looking forward to working with Damian, even though they might end up in different military divisions. Apple asks what he will do during the free week before enlistment, and Damian answers that he will be pretty busy. Damian keeps in mind that he needs to settle a few crucial matters before diving headfirst into the brutal military routine. When Apple asks for details, the boy quickly dodges the question, saying he just needs to buy some basic supplies. Apple drops a really useful tip, warning him that the official boots are stiff and he will need insoles to handle them. Damian smiles to himself because he already knows all about those terrible shoes from his brutal past life. He kindly thanks him for the advice, but Apple tells him not to sweat over a small detail like that. Damian asks about Apple's plans, and the blonde reveals he also has personal business. Seeing his funny, tired expression, Damian simply nods without asking further questions. Damian says goodbye, wishing him luck, and mentions they will meet in a week at the barracks. Apple watches Damian walk away calmly as a hooded man silently approaches. Sensing the man's presence, Apple greets him, casually revealing that this hooded servant's real name is actually Alan. Apple grows quiet, staring in the direction Damian went. Intrigued by the boy's true motives for enlisting, he recalls Damian's massive mana, feeling absolutely certain this kid is no ordinary commoner. Chuckling, he recalls Damian's sharp response and smiles to himself, thinking about how smoothly their little chat actually went. He also cannot forget Damian's striking line that the army was the only place where he truly belonged. Apple concludes that Damian is definitely carrying his own heavy secrets and deep personal motives that he cannot reveal. Apple comments to his subordinate that he has a pretty strong feeling they will be seeing a lot more of young Damian. Brushing the topic aside, he follows the servant, who politely informs him that their royal carriage is fully ready. Apple gently calls out Alan in a friendly way, reminding him never to use those fancy noble titles out in the open street. The servant quickly apologizes for the slip-up, and the two of them keep walking out of the military outpost. The scene shifts to show all the incredible grandeur and bustling activity of the Baroque kingdom's massive capital. Strolling through the packed streets, Damian can barely believe the peaceful, quiet calmness of this setting. As he watches merchants making deals, he remembers that in his past life, this capital became an absolute living nightmare. Back then, these streets were packed with absolute misery and starving refugees. He knows this peaceful illusion will vanish in 5 years, so you can bet he is going to use every second to prepare. First up, he needs to locate the headquarters of the famous Work Merchant Guild. He plans to stockpile a massive hoard of weapons and supplies that will become incredibly valuable once the conflict inevitably breaks out. He is fully aware that these merchant guilds will play a pretty massive, crucial role in the upcoming war. Damian recalls that in his past life, the Work Guild eventually became the single wealthiest organization on the entire continent. In his memories, frontline soldiers constantly talked about the massive influence and power that this specific guild actually possessed. Back on the battlefield, desperate soldiers would literally cheer whenever the supplies sent by the guild finally arrived. They would point in complete awe at the massive supply caravans crossing the sandy battlefields. One recruit would always complain bitterly they were risking their lives while the merchants made massive fortunes. Damian would call him out, reminding him that without the weapons and food sold by the guild, everyone would be dead already. The soldier would sigh, admitting he understood, but still had that bitter feeling even if funding endless charity work with those massive profits was actually pretty honorable. Damian finishes up his briefing, ordering his men to go collect the supplies sent for their division. He stands there watching them leave, happy they secured food for the upcoming battles. A trusted soldier walks up to Damian, pointing directly toward that legendary guild leader. Damian stares at the mysterious figure, asking if that guy is truly the Supreme Master. His soldier describes the robed man with clear distaste, calling his posture way too arrogant. Cut to the present. Damian walks with absolute focus through quiet, peaceful alleys, hunting down that exact guild headquarters. He remembers this group was doing charity work long before any of the real conflict even started. Sifting through dozens of organizations in the capital, he calculates that only 7 actually fit the profile. Damian decides to target the wealthiest ones first, since only they can fund such massive charitable donations. The sun slowly begins to sink below the horizon, painting the mountains and buildings in a warm golden glow. Worn out from searching all day, Damian sighs before a massive wooden door, praying it is finally the right one. He pushes the creaking door open, politely calling out to see if there is anyone around to help him. A friendly, well-dressed merchant approaches Damian, asking how he can be of service today. Damian offers a polite bow. He explains he wants to discuss an investment for the Hamel Guild's charity work. The merchant warmly praises the boy's noble mindset. Meanwhile, Damian reminds himself he still needs to confirm this guy's true identity. He introduces himself as Work, the Guild Master. That name immediately grabs our young main character's attention. Talk about a massive win, Damian celebrates internally before politely suggesting they sit down to talk. Once they sit, Damian asks if the merchant has a son. The sudden question leaves the man pretty confused. Work chuckles good-naturedly. He clarifies he has no sons, only a daughter who is still very young. Damian feels a wave of disappointment. He worries this promising lead might have just turned into another dead end. Suddenly, a soft click interrupts them. The door swings open, making Damian look back in a hurry. A youthful voice calls out that she is home. Damian freezes, instantly recognizing that exact voice. He watches a beautiful blonde girl walk through the entrance. The great future legend was a woman all along. Her father asks her to introduce herself, explaining that young Damian has come to make a very important investment. She introduces herself warmly, saying it is a pleasure to meet him. When she asks if he really wants to invest in charity, Damian politely confirms it. Think about it, the future master was supposed to be a man. Could the legend have been a woman in disguise? Damian wonders how she eventually succeeded work to run the guild. The girl gets straight to the point, asking exactly how much he intends to invest in this project first. Damian proposes an initial 300 gold coins, promising to scale that up depending on the actual results. Hearing that, both father and daughter sit in absolute shock. That is a fortune coming from a mere kid. Work clears his throat, asking seriously what kind of terms and conditions Damian expects for such a massive deal. Damian stands his ground, explaining he wants to buy shares in the guild for a cut of their future profits. Work stares at him. He is totally blown away by the sharp business mind hidden inside this young kid. Hesitating slightly, the merchant politely asks where a boy his age even gets that kind of legendary cash. Damian tells him not to worry. He claims he just wants to put his late parents' inheritance to good use. Work apologizes for the prying question, but Damian just nods calmly, completely understanding why the merchant had to ask. The guildmaster says he needs to hold a meeting regarding the shares first, promising to give his final answer very soon. The moment Damian steps outside, the daughter turns to her father, asking why he looks so deeply lost in thought. Work sighs in absolute fascination, marveling at how a 13-year-old kid can act with such intense, unshakable confidence. Pointing out the boy's fierce gaze, Work is convinced Damian is no ordinary child. He even teases his daughter, joking it is a shame he is so young since he would make a perfect match for her. The girl blushes bright red, yelling at her teasing father to stop spouting such ridiculous nonsense. Work just keeps laughing, teasing his embarrassed daughter about her standards while she begs him to shut up already. With negotiations officially settled with the Hamel Guild, and time flies by. Soon, the big day of enlistment finally arrives. Gazing out at the horizon, Damian feels that today marks the true beginning of his epic story. Reaching his hand out toward the rising sun, he swears his new life will take a completely different path from his tragic past. Filled with burning determination, Damian promises himself that this time, he will be the one ruling over the entire empire. Damon steps into his new barracks, double-checking if he really ended up in the first platoon of the 3rd camp. Looking around the crowded room, he realizes he doesn't recognize a single soul. Did they send Apple somewhere else? Damon drops his gear onto the bunk, pretty bummed that the only other recruit his age is nowhere to be found. A booming shout echoes at the entrance, welcoming the new recruits and instantly catching his attention. The man introduces himself firmly as platoon leader Brian, the guy who will be training them for the next month. He warns everyone that they are about to do a strict search of all personal bags for smuggled food or drinks. With a cold grin, he warns that anyone hiding snacks or booze is going to face some pretty harsh punishment. A few recruits immediately start sweating, realizing they totally forgot to throw away their contraband. Damon just rolls his eyes at how foolish they are. While the sergeant orders everyone to dump their bags, platoon leader Brian searches Damon's luggage and confirms he is completely clean. The sergeant looks at Damon's face and asks him curiously how old he actually is. Damon tells him he is only 13, and honestly, who wouldn't be totally taken aback by that? A few older recruits laugh, complaining the army has become a joke for letting kids join. Damon glares right back at the guy who insulted him, which only pisses off the big bully, who aggressively demands to know what he is looking at. Damon feels like a guy like that does not deserve an answer, but he knows he cannot just let this slide. He memorizes the bully's face, determined to prove that even a kid's fist can deliver some pretty serious damage. Right then, a bald recruit feels a sudden shiver as platoon leader Brian unexpectedly calls him out. Brian orders him to empty his bags, making the terrified guy stutter, saying that is all he has. With a menacing grin, Brian asks if he needs to search the bag himself. The recruit panics and quickly dumps out every single item from his bag to prove his innocence. Brian uses this moment to lay down a crystal-clear warning for anyone else thinking of hiding contraband. He threatens to force any rule breakers to run laps around the yard all night. As Brian yells at them to hurry, Damon watches silently, thinking these fools pretty much got what they deserved. Looking around the room, Brian sees that the luggage check is finally finished. He explains that he needs to appoint a cadet leader to keep things running when he is not around. Brian pulls a document from his pocket, scanning the list to evaluate their options. He announces that their platoon has a recruit who absolutely crushed the entrance exam with top marks. Scanning the paper, Brian calls out to ask which one of them is recruit Damon. Brian glances at the big bully from earlier, believing leadership requires character as well as skill. He asks the giant if he is Damon, but a calm voice from behind suddenly speaks up, saying it is actually him. Surprised it was not the massive recruit, the platoon leader turns to see who answered. He spins around startled, coming face to face with Damon standing right there in front of him. Brian remembers the kid is only 13, and Damon calmly confirms that is indeed the case. The loud bully is furious at the idea of a little kid taking charge, shouting that this army is not a playground. Brian snaps at him to shut his mouth, but the angry recruit insists he is totally in the right. Standing up, the guy argues that a cadet leader speaks for the sergeant, so they need someone with actual authority. Pointing directly at Damon, he yells that putting a brat in charge will completely ruin the platoon's discipline. Damon just smirks, he didn't even want this headache. But you know he can't let this loudmouth keep talking. He decides to take the bait, confident he will do a much better job than some brainless meathead. The bully fumes at the insult, while Brian steps in, asking if his name is Kyle to settle things down. Without warning, Brian reaches out and aggressively grabs the arrogant bully by his shirt collar. He warns with a terrifying glare that he will not tolerate insults toward other recruits. And next time will not be just a warning. Cowering under that terrifying look, Kyle gulps and mutters that he understands perfectly. Brian lets go, admitting the point makes some sense since a cadet leader genuinely does need strong authority. Rubbing his neck, Kyle recovers his composure and suggests an alternative way to decide who gets the leadership spot. He challenges Damon to a duel on the spot winner, takes the lead to prove who is actually the best. Brian looks down at Damon and asks if he is absolutely sure about accepting this challenge. Damon accepts without a single second of hesitation, seeing a great opportunity to establish some real discipline here. He points right at his massive opponent and remarks that he only needs to crush this big pile of muscles, leaving Kyle absolutely furious. Brian shouts to the crowd, asking if the other recruits want to see this fight, and they all roar in agreement. Not wanting to waste any more time, the sergeant orders everyone to follow him straight to the combat arena. Kyle walks with a pretty nasty smirk, totally confident he will easily crush the kid. Meanwhile, Damian follows pretty calmly as Brian announces the immediate start of their showdown. The sergeant lays down the basic rules of the arena and asks if both fighters are ready. Kyle, sporting a highly mocking look, responds with absolute certainty that he is good to go. Damian maintains his calm posture, answering firmly that he is completely ready to get this showdown started. And here we go. The sergeant gives the official signal to kick off the match. Kyle feigns pity, saying it feels like he is mistreating a kid. But Damian tells the big guy to drop the cheap drama and just attack already. That comment pops a vein on Kyle's forehead, making him absolutely furious at the kid's nerve. He charges at full speed straight toward Damian, screaming that he will beat him like a dog for running his mouth. Damian calmly watches Kyle charge, noting that his speed is actually pretty decent compared to soldiers from his past life. Still, Damian is not intimidated at all by the massive momentum. The punch comes in. Damian evaluates it, judging the strike to be pretty average. He dodges with absolute ease. Instantly, he knows this brute is no match for him. Kyle is shocked to see his blow dodge so easily, almost as if the kid knew exactly where the punch was heading. Angrily, he accuses Damian of using cheap tricks and charges again, swearing the kid won't dodge this next blow. Damian simply slips the punch casually, thinking his angry opponent's movements are way too slow for him. Furious, Kyle screams that if the brat can dodge his fists, he will just slam him onto the floor. He desperately tries to grab Damian to throw him down, but Damian manages to duck at the exact right moment, slipping straight under the big guy's massive hands. Kyle looks around desperately, unable to figure out where the kid went, until Damian calls out that he is right behind him. Now watch this. With a sharp, focused gaze, Damian prepares a precise strike to end the fight. He lands a direct punch right to Kyle's stomach, forcing him to groan in pure agony from the brutal impact. Damian knows that punch was heavily enhanced with mana, making the blow way too intense for a regular recruit to endure. Kyle drops straight to his knees, and Damian is actually a bit surprised to see him still trying to fight back. Swearing like a madman, the giant lunges forward. He is desperately promising to end the kid. Damian watches the wild charge. It is finally time to end this dispute for good. He strikes again, a precise blow to wrap up the match beyond any shadow of doubt. Kyle collapses, completely knocked out. Around them, the crowd watches in absolute stunned silence. The giant lies stretched out in the dirt, completely unresponsive, leaving the other recruits in absolute disbelief. Damian just claps his hands to dust them off. He remarks that the warm-up is finally over and casually glances sideways at the rest of the silent soldiers. Fixing the remaining recruits with a cold, intimidating glare, he asks if anyone else has the guts to fight him. Absolutely terrified by this insane display of strength, the men stammer and quickly shake their heads, denying any plans to fight. The match officially ends, and Damian is declared the winner, stepping up to take his new role as the platoon leader. A short while later, Kyle slowly walks out of the room with his head low, saying he is taking his leave. He gets lost in thought. He remembers passing out cold and being carried straight to the camp's infirmary. Apparently, he lost consciousness from the very first blow to his ribs. He remembers absolutely nothing after that. Kyle laments his humiliating defeat. He genuinely believed that nobody in this camp could ever beat him. The moment he opens the dorm door, the other soldiers look over with deep surprise and apprehension. They whisper anxiously, unsure if they should stop him, terrified he might end up right back in the infirmary. But Kyle simply walks up and calls out Damian's name seriously, making the boy turn around, curious to see what he wants. Suddenly, the giant drops to his knees right in front of him, officially admitting his defeat and swearing to serve him as his leader. Damian is left completely clueless by this sudden change in attitude, wondering if he accidentally hit the big guy's head a bit too hard. Kyle explains that Damian is the youngest and strongest opponent he has ever faced, so showing respect to the strong comes naturally to him. Initially, Damian figured he was just a simple troublemaker and is quite surprised to see him respect military etiquette. He waves off the formal titles, telling Kyle not to worry about any of that boss talk and to just call him by his name. Damian extends his hand with a friendly smile, proposing they get along from now on, and Kyle gladly accepts. A whole week passes. Physical training is grueling, and time flies by after enlistment. Other soldiers collapse, but Damian glides along effortless during their daily run. He realizes how a busy schedule makes days fly. Soon, Brian calls end of day and orders everyone back to the dorms except Damian, who must follow him right now. Damian follows the platoon leader with growing curiosity, trying to guess where on earth they're heading so suddenly. They reach the fort's main administration office, making Damian wonder if some critical announcement is waiting just for him. Stepping inside the office, Damian notices that all the other platoon leaders have already gathered there, waiting for their official orders. He quietly takes his place, figuring he'll learn the truth the second the commander starts his official statement. But wait, check this out, another recruit eyes Damian's thin frame and mocks him, saying he looks like a praying mantis. The arrogant jerk chuckles, thinking how funny it'd look to stand Damian right next to Kyle since their builds are total opposites. Damian glares at him with an icy stare. The idiot starts whining about it, only to get hit with a savage comeback that leaves him completely pissed off. The jerk gets incredibly riled up by Damian's mocking tone, while the rest of the guys struggle to hold in their laughter. Suddenly, Instructor Raymond steps into the office and demands absolute silence, chewing them out for acting like children in a sacred military space. The guy snarls. He tells Damian they'll settle this later. With all the silent cadets lined up, Raymond reveals he brought them together to announce a massive platoon battle happening in 1 week for their final evaluation. The officer commands every leader to prepare their units perfectly, and the cadets roar out in unison, accepting the challenge. Once the military instructor wraps up, the recruits are finally dismissed to head back to quarters. But the second Damian steps out of the main office, he gets suddenly blindsided by one of the rival cadets, who calls him over to a secluded corner. The cocky jerk tells Damian he's too young to get how military life works, warning him that he'll end up bloody if he keeps acting tough. Suddenly, someone steps in. Another platoon leader defends Damian, harshly calling out the bully for being disrespectful and wasting everyone's valuable time. The bully snarls at him to stay out of it unless he wants a beating too, but Damian's defender just chuckles, asking if he really thinks he can back up those words. No patience for trash talk. The defender suggests leaving that clown, and Damian instantly agrees. Damian stops in his tracks, turning back around with a clever strategy to identify exactly who this loudmouth is. He casually asks which group the guy commands, and the arrogant jerk proudly brags about leading the 4th platoon. Flash of a cocky grin, Damian warns him he will remember that face, promising to crush him in the upcoming showdown. As they continue walking down the corridor together, his new ally asks if he's actually that legendary recruit, Damian. Damian asks how he knows his name, and the guy explains he heard all about him from Apple, especially his perfect exam score. The friendly soldier formally introduces himself as Gerard, leader of the 3rd platoon, and Damian gladly accepts the friendly rivalry with open arms. Back at his own group's quarters, Damian fully steps into his leadership role, calling out to command everyone's immediate attention. The recruits go dead silent. Kyle immediately asks what went down in that meeting, and Damian drops the bomb that they have exactly 1 week to prepare for an all-out battle against the other platoon. With absolute determination, he guarantees his squad they will take first place in this evaluation no matter what. He then demands they memorize one critical, game-changing target who'll be waiting for them out on the field. So yeah, Damian casually reveals their biggest objective is to absolutely demolish the entire 4th platoon. With a dark look, he adds a terrifying threat. He wants that 4th platoon leader wiped out, asking if they understand. As the second week of training finally kicks off, the entire atmosphere at the military camp turns incredibly tense. Instructor Raymond barks that the military survives solely on victory, announcing they will start training battle formations today. He stresses that although it is group training, cadets with stellar individual combat skills will earn massive bonus points. While everyone shouts their acceptance, Damian realizes those extra points are perfect motivation to climb the kingdom's ranks. Feeling total confidence in his own power, the young man knows that every single recruit needs to push past their limits in this training. Raymond points to a blackboard, explaining that their first tactic today is the wedge formation, which is ideal for shattering enemy lines. This strategy acts exactly like a giant, powerful arrow with massive destructive force, but it carries a pretty major weakness if the front line fails. Damian knows that if the tip holds strong, their momentum is going to be completely unstoppable, and he smiles because they have the perfect candidate ready. Raymond orders the platoon to start training immediately, telling them to split into 2 groups and set up their wedges in the arena. Damian sends Kyle over to the other end while taking full charge of his main group, leaving the massive guy pretty eager for a healthy rematch. He gathers his men close and promises to share a few crucial tips on how to really sharpen up their offensive wedge. One surprised recruit asks if he has done this before, so Damian makes up a quick lie, claiming he learned it from his soldier father. Damian whispers his highly detailed tactical plan to the soldiers, somehow perfectly predicting exactly what the opponent is going to do next. The guys find his strategy brilliant, and honestly, you can't even blame them for getting hyped to try it. Damian tells his strongest guys to line up directly behind his position, while ordering the shorter soldiers to protect the group flanks with their sturdy shields. He shows them the proper stance and warns everyone to keep their shields at head height, getting a roaring shout of confirmation in return. He notices the opposing platoon has set up a highly defensive formation, but he honestly does not care about their barrier since it won't make a single bit of difference. Charging in the lead, Damian screams for nobody to slow down, fully planning to smash through that enemy defense with one single, devastating blow. Instructor Raymond bellows from the center of the training field to begin. With the match officially underway, the opposing squad marches forward in perfect, robotic sync, keeping their rhythm steady to crash into Damian's defense. Damian silently praises their impressive coordination, noting how quickly and smoothly the enemy formation is advancing toward them. The moment they close the distance right in front of Kyle's group, Damian lets out a massive roar, ordering his squad to charge ahead even faster. Both shield walls sprint toward each other, roaring out intense battle cries as their violent collision approaches. Damian flares a brilliant purple aura around his body, deciding it is time to channel his mana and slam this shield charge home. Knowing he has to maximize his limited power in this moment, he lets out a mighty shout, ordering everyone to push forward with everything they have. The collision of the 2 squads creates a thundering blast as wooden shields smash together with unbelievable force. Gritting his teeth, Damian yells for his men to push harder, aiming directly for the gaps in the formation just as they planned. Striking those weak spots instantly triggers sheer panic across the rival defense. Opposing soldiers scramble in confusion, completely unsure of who is supposed to block, and Damian seizes on this split-second hesitation to strike. Grabbing this golden opportunity, he commands his squad to unleash their spear offensive without wasting a single breath. Their padded spears strike low, aiming directly at the opponent's legs to sweep them over. Instantly, several rival soldiers lose their footing, tumbling backward onto the floor in absolute confusion as the sweep hits home. Kyle panics. Watch this. Kyle is absolutely losing his mind, seeing his squad crumble, roaring for them to get back up. Desperate under their relentless push, Kyle knows he must act fast to turn the tide. But out of nowhere, Damian cuts him off, asking sarcastically if the big guy already forgot who his real opponent is. Pushing back with all his massive strength, Kyle groans in frustration and roars for Damian to get out of his way. Damian mockingly asks if he really wants him to move, instantly setting up a lightning-fast sidestep to the side. Damian easily slips aside, sending the giant pitching forward, completely clueless about what just happened. He crashes hard against the floor, groaning in pain as he suffers yet another defeat. Damian praises the big guy's incredible raw power but calmly suggests he should start using those muscles with a bit more strategy. Observing from the edge of the training field, Gerard is deeply impressed, realizing that Damian is far better than any of the rumors suggested. Honestly, Gerard finds it pretty hard to believe Damian is just an ordinary recruit, especially since he lacks a massive, muscular build. Instructor Raymond finally calls an end to the drill, officially declaring victory for Damian's squad. Damian commends his squad's great effort, and Kyle just grins right back, swearing that he will absolutely crush him during their next practice session. As they walk back, the recruits shower Damian with questions about his genius tactics. He happily notices that instead of running straight back to their dorms, the soldiers are now practicing and reviewing their strikes. Damian feels pretty pleased with his squad's dedicated energy, but a mocking voice from outside suddenly cuts off his thoughts. He freezes in his tracks and looks toward the sound. Curious, he tries to figure out who is talking trash behind his back. Two guys mock Damian for leading the training, asking if the other soldiers following a kid have lost their minds. The soldiers of the first platoon hear these insults aimed at their leader. Furious, they call out their sheer nerve. But the shameless provokers keep laughing, mocking that the first platoon standards must be embarrassingly low. The fourth platoon leader steps up with a smug smirk. He says it is all the fault of a brat who does not know his place but insists on playing leader. Seeing that arrogant fourth platoon guy back again, Damian coldly wonders if the jerk is simply begging for a beating. Damian tries to brush off the cheap taunts of a nobody, but then hears his own men yelling furiously at their rivals. He turns around in shock and honestly, can you blame them? His crew is not letting this slide. Damian's men roar that their rivals will bitterly regret this when they face each other in the upcoming tournament. Kyle points furiously at the arrogant leader, warning him to prepare for a complete and total wipeout in the arena. Right after, Kyle asks Damian if those idiots are indeed the fourth platoon squad they were ordered to crush. With highly intimidating glares, Kyle and the boys furiously vow that they will absolutely obliterate those scumbags. The entire platoon skips their rest time to keep training relentlessly, completely laser-focused on their revenge. Damian watches their intense training and realizes that, while he did not expect them to take the bait, the result is pretty interesting. Smirking to himself, he figures all this raw anger might actually serve as excellent fuel for their rapid growth. Meanwhile, inside the administration office, night falls silently as the two officers discuss their progress with the training. The camp commander, Bruce, asks directly if any of the new recruits have shown genuinely promising potential. Head instructor Raymond confirms there are a few standout talents, drawing special attention to two specific recruits. Bruce notes that both are remarkably young and wants details, so Raymond reveals that both boys can already control mana perfectly. Pretty surprised, Bruce asks if they come from wealthy noble backgrounds, but Raymond clarifies they seem to be simple commoners. He grows thoughtful, knowing advanced cultivation techniques cost real fortunes and are out of reach. Raymond explains that Damian enlisted as a poor orphan while Apple comes from a humble home, making their mastery highly unexplainable. Switching topics, Bruce brings up a scuffle between the squads, and Raymond confirms that the incident directly involves young Damian. Raymond explains that because Damian is just a 13-year-old boy leading the squad, the other platoon heavily underestimated him. He explains that the mocking actually united the first platoon. They now respect and accept Damian from the bottom of their hearts as their only leader. Bruce listens closely to the story and cracks an intrigued smile, finding the young prodigy's leadership quite fascinating. The commander raises his hand thoughtfully. Oh, he's planning to leverage that rivalry for a special test. He leans over the desk and whispers his new brutal training strategy directly into Raymond's ear. Raymond fears this plan might backfire, but Bruce pragmatically counters that if they fail, it means they reach their limit. The commander argues it is worth taking a risk to test if their bond is strong enough, launching the plan immediately. He orders physical training for both the 1st and 4th platoons to be cranked up to the fort's absolute limit. While training under the hot sun, Kyle and a bald recruit feel a strange shiver down their spines, clueless about this sudden dread. Back in the dorms, the recruits complain about the exhaustion, whispering that only their platoon and the 4th got slapped with this harsh punishment. Another soldier complains about the grueling mud-crawling drills, wondering if it all happened just because they ran their mouths. Kyle approaches Damian's bed, asking if the rumors about those extra crawl drills are actually true. Damian reflects on the real motives of the high officers and concludes they have no choice but to push through. Damian walks firmly through the barracks, asking his men if they came all this way just to play around. He warns them that the mud crawling will be rough, but it's going to build far more physical endurance in them than the other platoon, proving that every single drill has a real purpose. The grown men feel pretty embarrassed seeing a mere kid hold such a mature outlook. Complaining now would just make them look way worse than a child. Damian just smiles and admits he knows how brutally tough it is at first, but promises to help everyone so they can survive together. A recruit stammers, asking if they really have to crawl over jagged gravel. Damian asks them right back if they honestly expected a soft, warm blanket to be rolled out. Kyle points out that the boy speaks like he's done this grueling drill 1,000 times, and Damian calmly confirms that he has. The young man briefly recalls his past life, remembering endless moments spent crawling at his absolute limit. He was pressed against the dirt just to stay alive. On the outside, he offers a subtle smile, knowing the real purpose of this military training is actually quite different. He knows that piling exhaustion, mixed with bloody cuts from the sharp gravel, will take an absolutely massive toll on their mental state. Damian reflects that it's during these moments of extreme pain and stress that a platoon's unity crumbles, and soldiers start turning on each other. He concludes that this test is meant to see who can handle the pressure, and whether the 1st or 4th platoon has better teamwork. Absolutely determined not to walk into such an obvious trap, the young boy squats by his gear and orders everyone to grab the spare socks issued by the army. And you've got to wonder, what in the world is Damian going to do with a bunch of military-issued socks? He rips the fabric right down the middle, promising to show them how a simple piece of clothing can literally save their skin today. The next morning, the 1st platoon soldiers line up on the dirt training field and shout out in unison, confirming their presence to the mean-looking instructor on duty. The man introduces himself as Nielsen, the strict instructor in charge of this drill, and commands his assistant to take the demonstration stance. He explains that the low crawl requires them to lie completely flat while keeping their spear straight, using opposing limbs to drag themselves forward. Nielsen points toward the brutal track packed with obstacles and sharp barbed wire, asking in a cold tone if they are actually ready. The recruits roar back in agreement, and the instructor notes that unlike the pathetic 4th platoon, these guys actually have real fire in their eyes. Cutting the nonsense, Nielsen blows the whistle, signaling the first wave of recruits to launch themselves into the painful crawling course. The recruits charge forward into the dirt and sharp rocks, letting out fierce war cries to tackle the grueling track. Watching them go, Nielsen quietly wonders what the commander's real intent was by forcing such a brutal drill so early on. He knows that dragging oneself over this jagged ground is insanely painful, concluding that these new guys are going to suffer immensely. Now look at this, the instructor freezes in complete shock as he spots something absolutely mind-blowing happening right on the dirt track. The recruits are literally flying through the jagged obstacles at a mind-boggling speed, leaving the man breaking out in a cold sweat. Nielsen simply can't comprehend how fresh rookies who've never done this can slide forward with such smooth, terrifying speed. A recruit snaps the dazed instructor back to reality, asking when the next group is allowed to head out, and Nielsen merely stammers, giving the 2nd squad immediate permission to launch. The second wave of soldiers also tears through the sharp barbed wire like lightning, maintaining the exact same jaw-dropping pace as the first. Totally blown away, the officer whispers to his assistant that these recruits look like starving berserkers charging straight into battle. Damian lets out a quiet chuckle. Knowing their tough instructor, Nielsen would never expect such a flawless run on their very first day of real practice. Kyle leans over, whispering that the whole thing was absolute madness, while another soldier jokes that he actually had to fake crying out in pain. He rolls up his dusty sleeve, showing off how those shredded socks worked as amazing improvised knee and elbow pads against the jagged rocks. The guys burst out laughing, hyping Damian up and jokingly asking if he's actually some legendary military mastermind hiding in plain sight. Nielsen officially calls an end to the grueling crawling drill, barking orders for the 1st platoon to pack up and head back. As they walk back, Kyle asks with genuine curiosity where Damian learned such a genius, highly practical trick to protect their joints. Damian replies that he learned the life hack from his late father, but adds that the old man left him one final warning before passing away. He laughs, revealing that the big secret tip was simply to never get caught by their instructor. Meanwhile, Nielsen screams in the background, punishing some recruits who tried copying the trick. Kyle bursts out laughing at the joke, giving him a friendly slap on the back that Damian finds suspiciously, brutally heavy. Gazing at the weapon racks, Damian realizes that with only shield and spear drills left, he will soon master the kingdom's absolute best spear technique. Nobles sneered at its common army origins, but when fully mastered, it becomes an unstoppable force that rivals the elite clans. Back in his past life, the biggest issue was that most soldiers quit after learning the basics. But for Damian, this martial art was his sole path forward. Training as if his life depended on it brought insane progress, and meeting the master who guided him only accelerated his evolution. Damian smiles warmly, fondly remembering his eccentric mentor, completely certain that fate will bring their paths together once again. Down in the dorm hallways, exhausted recruits drag themselves back from practice, bitterly cursing whoever came up with that brutal crawling drill. Peering down the corridor, Kyle points out to Damian that the 4th platoon also seems to have just finished up their training for the day. But the mood over there is hostile. Their furious leader is screaming at the top of his lungs, telling them to shut up. Kyle and Damian freeze in their tracks, completely caught off guard by the massive racket exploding from the neighboring dorms. The subordinates refuse to take his arrogant abuse any longer and snap back, arguing that being leader does not give him the right to act like a tyrant. Watching the drama, Damian's recruits watch their rivals turn on each other and wonder if they would be fighting too without those knee pads. They chuckle and thank Damian for those life-saving socks, immediately catching a furious, hate-filled glare from the hostile 4th Platoon leader. Meanwhile, those angry 4th Platoon recruits are baffled to see Damian's squad looking perfectly fine after such a brutal crawling session. Look at this guy clenching his fists in rage. He's utterly convinced Damian cheated. The angry leader vows to absolutely crush every single one of Damian's men during the upcoming tournament. He glares at his rivals with venomous eyes, completely obsessed with getting his revenge in the arena, no matter what it takes. As for Damian, he remains totally unbothered, focused solely on claiming first place in the upcoming tournament. Days fly by, and the highly anticipated recruit tournament finally kicks off at the military fort. As all 4 platoons assemble in the courtyard, the drill officer barks orders for everyone to stand by until called. Standing in the middle of the formation, Kyle steps closer to Damian to mention something he found pretty unusual. Looking closely at the boy, the giant recruit mentions that Damian feels somehow different, wondering if he is just imagining things. Damian smirks slightly, thinking to himself that maybe his sudden physical growth is just a normal teenage development. The big bald recruit chuckles and jokes that Damian is already tall enough, laughing that he's the one who's way too massive anyway. But Damian looks at Kyle seriously, wondering if the big guy actually managed to sense his massive shift in power out of pure instinct. Just last night, he finally advanced his mana cultivation to the 2-star stage, dramatically expanding his overall energy reserves. Seeing all his relentless meditation since arriving at the military camp finally pay off brings a wave of deep satisfaction. Damian pushes those thoughts aside and quietly calls Kyle over. Looking at his friend with a razor-sharp, focused gaze, he declares with absolute firmness that he wants to guarantee the 1st Platoon's victory by completely dominating everyone with an overwhelming lead. The reason is simple. The tournament winners get the exclusive right to choose any rare piece of gear from the fort's armory as their reward. Most recruits will aim for standard C-rank weapons, but Damian knows there are far more valuable treasures hidden inside that vault, and he already knows exactly which hidden artifact he is going to claim. He remembers hearing about this secret prize from a comrade in his past life. Seriously, this legendary ring has insane passive skills that easily match an elite, a rank artifact or even higher. He needs it. Damian must secure first place in the tournament before the resident genius Apple gets the chance to steal his reward. The boy asks Kyle if he is ready to handle his end of the bargain, and the big guy grins with absolute confidence. Kyle slams his massive hands together with a loud crack, immediately demanding the attention of their entire squad. He yells out, "Our leader Damian is going to completely dominate this tournament and take first place." Did you all hear that? The recruits roar back with raw energy, shouting that they will fight by his side and pave the path to the very top. Hearing their thunderous cheers, Kyle grins, satisfied until the fort announcer's booming voice echoes across the courtyard, calling the 1st Platoon to step forward. With Damian leading the charge and chest puffed with pride, his 1st Platoon soldiers march out, completely locked in on winning. This military competition splits into offense and defense rounds, forcing teams to trade roles and fight for the highest score. If the attackers fail to steal the enemy flag before the timer runs out, they lose, and the announcer says 2nd Platoon starts on offense. Damian stands on defense beside his squad, keeping an icy, razor-focused look. He quietly tells his men to just run the exact plays they tirelessly drilled all week long. Damian tells Kyle to shove them hard the moment the signal drops, and his ally promises he feels incredibly confident in his own raw power. Both formations line up face-to-face inside the arena, and the official signal blasts, starting their very first major match. The 2nd Platoon storms forward with shields up, screaming battle cries to shatter Damian's heavy defensive line. Following Damian's sharp command, the 1st Platoon soldiers lock their wooden shields tight and take the brutal hit with pure grit. These attackers try every trick to force their way through, but panic sets in when they realize this wall is totally rock solid. Gerard watches them from the very sidelines. He thinks this defense is way too dense, believing they can only shield themselves without ever striking back. But look at this, Damian suddenly roars the command to launch a counterattack, leaving Gerard completely speechless. Kyle leads this push with intense fury, throwing his massive weight forward to smash right through the attacker's defensive line. Completely helpless against that beastly charge, the enemies panic, screaming like crazy for some backup on the front lines. The second platoon leader gets furious at being shoved back on his own attack turn, roaring for his men to hold the line. Damian calls out to his ally across the field, and Kyle nods with burning eyes, knowing the perfect moment is finally here. This massive warrior charges in and slams the enemy, delivering a pretty heavy blow that sends several of them flying. The panicked enemies scream in terror, calling Kyle a straight-up monster for bulldozing entire lines with just his shoulder. Kyle bellows out right in the center, shouting for his teammates to lock in right beside him and keep the momentum rolling. Damian's entire squad moves in perfect sync, throwing their full weight forward to crush the rival defense with raw power. The rival commander just stares, totally clueless against their perfect teamwork, especially since both squads had the exact same amount of training time. Damian spots a massive opening in the enemy defense and orders his entire platoon to march, fully locked in on ending this game. Under his lead, the soldiers rush forward like a wave, completely steamrolling whatever is left of the second platoon. Instructor Raymond stands there completely stunned, asking the sergeant if he secretly ran extra drills with this squad. But the sergeant is just as shocked, forcing Raymond to realize this group's skill is downright crazy, moving exactly like seasoned elite troops. Brian watches from afar, knowing this insane blowout of a victory happened because of one major thing. Thanks to Damian, who directs his troops to fan out and absolutely demolish the second platoon's setup. Brian recalls how the squad voluntarily stayed late to train, and how Damian's extra coaching really paid off big time. These guys push forward, raising their shields high, completely dedicated to executing the exact plays Damian taught them. The sergeant admits he was pretty worried about a young kid leading, but he has to respect the results Damian brought in. Just watch. Damian spots the ultimate opening and yells for Kyle to charge full throttle right now. Kyle flashes a cocky grin, scanning the field for his target, before popping up right behind the guy and telling him his time is up. Terrified, the enemy yells for his friends to stop attacking and just help him block this giant. Kyle shows them they have absolutely no chance, marching ahead while they scramble to stack up. The rival captain chuckles, calling them fools, while the other soldiers wonder why the giant is just standing there and not hitting. With a sarcastic smirk on his face, the enemy claims they just blindly walked into a nasty trap. Damian's teammates look incredibly confused, suddenly spooked by the mention of a trap. But right then, a shadow blurs across the field, and Damian praises his ally for the setup, using Kyle's massive back as a launch pad to leap high. The kid flies high into the air, clutching the flag, and dives straight toward the rival commander. He lands a perfectly clean hit, slamming the guy face first into the dirt. With their leader knocked out, the timer runs dry, and the announcer declares that the second platoon failed to grab the flag. Damian celebrates the huge win, holding the red flag high in the air as his entire squad cheers him on. After a quick break, the announcer calls for a side swap while everyone gossips about the first platoon's insane strength. The other officer disagrees, warning that this tournament is not going to be decided that easily or predictably. He gestures over to the adjacent field, telling his companions to take a good look at the skills on display there. He wonders if that crew might actually be the perfect match to go toe-to-toe with the formidable first platoon. Across the arena, the fourth platoon leader slams his foot down in a fit of absolute rage and frustration. He fumes because the plan was to treat the third platoon as a warm-up, but now his panic-stricken men realize the enemy is not backing down a single inch. Furious, the fourth platoon leader screams out. He demands to know what they are doing and barks at them to stick to the strategy, while his recruits complain that he only knows how to yell from the safety of the rear. Gerard suggests exploiting the enemy's clear exhaustion to charge ahead, but Appel firmly shakes his head. The blonde kid explains that they just have to hold their ground and target the shield bearers, who will inevitably collapse on their own. Gerard agrees with the strategy, amazed that a 14-year-old kid could read the battlefield so quickly. Honestly, we're all wondering about his background, since he is clearly no regular kid. Gerard screams out. He commands his squad to focus their defense on the shield bearers and keep their lines tight. The impact is massive as they collide, but the third platoon holds strong. One irritated attacker snaps, telling them to start fighting for real instead of just dragging things out. But he knows the fourth platoon has completely burned through their stamina, and their patience is running thin. Utterly gassed and panting for air, one of the enemy vanguard admits he cannot hold the line anymore. Spotting the perfect opening, Gerard barks orders for the third platoon to launch their counterattack immediately. Charging forward, the third platoon lets out a roaring battle cry against the rival defense. The opponents scream in panic, desperately trying to brace their shields to keep their front line from collapsing. Amidst the chaos of battle, Gerard shouts out for his ally, Appel. Right on cue, Appel blitzes forward at blinding speed toward the enemy ranks. Grunting as he exerts himself, the kid plants his foot right onto an enemy shield and launches himself skyward. The prodigy soars insanely high through the air, completely bypassing the entire enemy defense line with ease. With flawless precision, he spins his spear as he descends like a meteor directly onto his rivals. He delivers a rapid flurry of strikes, completely wiping out whatever resistance the enemy forces had left. The 4th platoon leader falls into absolute despair, desperately wondering how they can even think of facing Damian's squad. Suddenly, he freezes, realizing Damian is staring at him with a chilling glare. Damian notes that it is over, just as the announcer declares the 3rd platoon victorious. You can see Damian sizing him up, realizing Appel is going to be a pretty tough opponent to beat. At the end of the day, Damian knows his true showdown will be against those 3rd platoon soldiers. Damian smiles in anticipation of the clash, genuinely hoping to face the young prodigy Appel in the tournament finals. Their rest period quickly comes to an end, as the instructor barks at all platoons to reform on the training field. Kyle warns everyone that their upcoming battle will be against the 4th platoon, and Damian agrees they must do everything to score. Kyle vows to smash the face of whoever called Damian a brat, but the young leader claims that target for himself, telling his friend to stand aside. Damian takes charge, explaining to his soldiers that their opponents are completely exhausted and their teamwork has totally fallen apart. Even knowing the enemy's fatal weakness, Damian refuses to take it easy and plans to crush them as quickly as possible. Kyle laughs, clearly thrilled, saying he has waited way too long to make his loudmouthed rival pay dearly for talking so much trash. The young leader looks at his squad with a serious expression, warning them he intends to end this match quickly, demanding their absolute focus. The entire squad answers back with a booming roar, acknowledging his battle plan instantly. The 1st platoon warriors line up neatly behind their heavy shields, clutching their red flag tightly. Across the battlefield, the 4th platoon also gets into position, raising their blue flag high for the impending clash. Damian watches the opposing team from a distance, maintaining a cool, confident smile before the signal is given. The 4th platoon leader glares at Damian with absolute fury in his eyes and screams, officially kicking off the chaotic match. Both squads charge forward at full speed, letting out absolute beastly battle cries. From a high angle, we see both lines moving in perfect sync toward a brutal collision right in the center. Damian notices how incredibly sloppy and weak the enemy line is, instantly realizing it will be an absolute piece of cake to bust through their front guard. Still, he has no plans to hold back, choosing instead to deliver a final, bone-crushing blow to end this clash. Damian calls out to his giant ally, and Kyle charges ahead with a roaring battle cry to crush their defenses. The sheer impact of the giant's blow is devastating, shattering the enemy frontline shield bearers with ease. Soldiers from the 4th platoon are sent flying. They scream in terror, completely overwhelmed by Kyle's monstrous physical strength. Absolutely losing his mind, the opposing commander yells at his troops to push back and hold the line. He commands the shield bearers to protect their banner at all costs, while ordering the spearmen to strike back quickly. But wait, watch this, because a lightning-fast shadow suddenly leaps right over their messy front line. Damian appears floating right above the rival leader, coldly telling the kid he is here to collect on that old grudge. The 4th platoon leader gasps in shock, frozen solid under the weight of Damian's terrifying aura right above him. Damian delivers a devastating kick straight to the kid's face, making him let out a painful groan from the impact. They both crash onto the dirt, but the rival commander is forced to his knees, utterly battered. Gasping for air, the furious leader curses Damian, yelling out that there is definitely a limit to how much he can look down on others. Clenching his spear with all his might, the kid snaps and asks if Damian thinks he is just some useless scarecrow. He lunges forward, executing a rapid strike. He yells that in a fair duel, taking down someone like Damian would be a walk in the park. Damian simply sidesteps the incoming attack without breaking a sweat. Finding the attack laughably predictable, Damian easily controls the flow and mockingly asks if that is really the best the kid can bring to a fight. The enemy commander freezes in pure disbelief as his own spear is snatched away from his grip in a split second. Damian stares down at his unarmed foe, thinking it is absolutely pathetic that the kid lost his weapon to a basic move. Without missing a beat, Damian cracks the blunt end of his spear right into the boy, sending him crashing down with a painful scream. Damian glares coldly at the dirt and says that dropping your weapon in a duel is basically begging to get beaten for being stupid. Damian warns him to remember this harsh lesson, since some solid advice like this might actually save his life one day. Damian lands the final knockout blow, asking the unconscious kid if his message has finally been delivered crystal clear. The other platoon members rush to their unconscious leader, while Damian walks away, thinking the whole fight was way too easy and boring. Seeing the match is over, the sergeant officially ends the duel, declaring the 4th platoon completely unable to continue. The referee prepares to raise the ceremonial banner and end the round. Get ready because here comes the final call of this arena clash. He shouts, declaring a landslide victory for the 1st platoon, as the soldiers celebrate with Damian waving the captured flag. Kyle grins from ear to ear, calling the win incredibly refreshing. The other recruits praise their leader, admitting they expected nothing less, while the shocked crowd wonders how a 13-year-old boy can fight like a master. The spectating officers agree that the kid is a pure genius, whose skills might actually surpass the kingdom's top instructors. Raymond smiles. He admits there is no denying his talent, when a sudden voice behind him asks if something fun is going on. The instructor gasps, caught off guard by the voice, and spins around quickly to find out who just showed up. It is the legendary Leon Hark Belkane, the highly respected head training instructor for the kingdom's 3rd division, making his grand entrance. Spotting their superior approach, the soldiers salute in perfect unison and shout out their wishes of eternal glory to the entire kingdom. The veteran commander looks at the battlefield from a distance, asking the sergeant if that kid is the legendary recruit he mentioned, which the sergeant confirms. Meanwhile, back in the arena, Damian's squad celebrates wildly, throwing their leader high into the air. Showing a highly intrigued grin, Leon Hart quietly notes to himself that a fascinating recruit has just joined the military ranks. Later, inside the barracks, a panicked recruit dashes in screaming that something absolutely mind-blowing is taking place outside right now. Damian and his squad look highly confused by the panic, while the private explains that a massive celebrity just entered the camp. He drops the news that a legendary 3rd Division instructor just arrived, and apparently, all the senior officers stood dead at attention. Spurred on by this, Damon quickly asks for the instructor's name, but the recruit totally blanks on it. Trying to jog his memory, Damon asks if the guy's name sounded anything close to Ryan Hart. The rookie goes completely quiet before finally whispering a name. It is Leon Hark. He cheers, celebrating that it is the exact guy, but then notices Damon has already stood up and walked out. Ignoring his buddy's startled calls, Damon marches out at a lightning-fast pace down the hallway. The recruit is left standing there, totally bewildered by his sudden exit. Can you even imagine the hype? Damon sprints down that hallway, absolutely desperate to confirm with his own eyes if this legend is really his old master. Damon suddenly halts as he spots instructor Leon Hark heading his way, accompanied by another sergeant. Leon Hark spots the kid in the middle of the corridor and instantly recognizes him as that elite young spearman from the tournament. The sergeant chuckles, telling Damon that they were actually heading over to look for him right now. Keeping things incredibly formal, Damon snaps into a perfect military salute. He thumps his fist hard against his chest, wishing glory to the kingdom. Leon Hark asks straight up if he is Damon, and the young recruit firmly confirms it. Damon knows the 3rd Division is connected to the camp, but never expected to meet this legend so early. Inside, Damon gets pretty emotional. Standing before him is the legendary master, who shaped him more than anyone else in his previous life. Leon Hark mentions he came in person because Raymond, the notoriously strict head instructor, would not stop singing the boy's praises. Sizing him up, the veteran officer immediately senses that Damon is running an exceptionally stable mana cultivation method. He compliments his high-tier spear techniques before asking if Damon already has a specific military unit in mind for the future. Damon hesitates for just a second, preparing to drop the answer that has been locked in his heart since day one. Wearing a confident grin and a laser-focused stare, Damon boldly announces his ultimate goal is to join the dreaded Neocalites unit. Both Leon Hark and the sergeant freeze, completely shocked by such an unexpected choice. Now, if you don't know about Neocalites, it's the absolute most brutal, monster-infested meat grinder of a unit with a terrifying death rate. The instructor asks why on earth he'd choose such a death trap, and Damon simply answers that he needs to go there to get stronger. Leon Hark offers him a recommendation letter to the Knight's Order, which absolutely floors the sergeant since that place is strictly reserved for high nobles. Damon gives his deepest thanks but politely declines, explaining that he absolutely must track down someone specific in the 3rd Division. Admiring his unshakable determination, Leon Hark respects his choice and dismisses Damon to go get some rest. But the sergeant immediately loses his mind, calling him a total idiot for passing up a golden ticket to the nobility. The sergeant tries to go back and argue with the kid, but Leon Hark stops him, asking if he honestly believes Damon is just acting blindly here. He points out that the sergeant clearly missed the absolutely fierce, laser-sharp focus in the boy's eyes during their whole conversation. Leon Hark chuckles, genuinely wondering how such an insanely impressive 13-year-old boy even exists in this kingdom. An order is handed down that nobody get in his way, because if he really joins the 3rd Division, they are bound to meet again anyway. By the next morning, the highly anticipated final showdown between the 1st and 3rd platoons is officially set, with soldiers packed inside the arena. Damian rallies his platoon with ultimate confidence, telling them straight up that no other squad in this camp can touch them. Kyle chuckles from the back rows with his buddies, fully agreeing that their group has become absolute beasts lately. Eyes locked on the prize, Damian orders his squad to charge in hard and completely steamroll the enemy like they always do. The battle horn blows to start the match, and it's announced that the 3rd platoon will strike first. Damian immediately takes his place at the absolute front line, shouting out to his team to lock up tight and hold a flawless defensive wall. Watching from the side, Gerard points out to Apple that the 1st platoon is using the exact same defensive wall from yesterday. Gerard locks his gaze onto Damian, warning him that his performance is going to be the absolute key to winning this. Barking out the attack command, Gerard leads the 3rd platoon as they rush forward at full speed, shields raised high, a massive crash of wood echoing everywhere as the two heavy front lines finally smash together right in the center of the field. Gritting his teeth through the sheer strain, Damian roars out, ordering his team to shove the invaders back. The 1st platoon guys throw their entire weight into the barrier, finally starting to push the enemy back. Gerard spots the maneuver from afar and immediately grows worried. They are using the exact same tactic as yesterday. When one of Gerard's men begins to buckle under the insane pressure, the captain immediately yells out, ordering Apple to finally make his move. And check this out, their shield wall suddenly parts on purpose, revealing Apple standing right in the middle. Damian is totally shocked to see them intentionally split their defensive formation. He can only wonder what kind of wild scheme they are pulling, while Apple locks his eyes onto the 1st platoon, fully prepared to launch a solo strike. With a lightning-fast spear thrust, the blonde kid unleashes a devastating blow and drops their very first shield bearer. Damian's eyes widen in sheer amazement, stunned by the heavy physical power the young blonde wields. Gerard cheers at the successful hit and instantly orders his platoon to swarm the new opening with everything they have got. But Kyle suddenly appears in the gap with his shield, furiously roaring that not a single soul will step past him. The absolute giant slams directly into the charge, throwing the enemy into a panic over his monstrous, unnatural physical strength. Damian knows they only held because of Kyle's insane power, but the situation remains highly dangerous. He silently admits that Apple is a complete monster for sending a fully armored shield bearer flying with a single strike. The recruits whisper, utterly stunned, wondering if that kid is even human, and why someone from the far north is in this training camp. Meanwhile, Apple realizes things are getting complicated because that massive giant from the 1st platoon is completely locking him down. Back in the dorms, Damian told Kyle to focus entirely on marking Apple, knowing that keeping him busy was their key to surviving. Kyle had asked who the kid even was, and Damian just smiled, saying he recognized him the second he saw him. Kyle lets out a confident grin, absolutely thrilled that his dream match is finally standing right in front of him. Gerard urgently asks the young prodigy if he can actually break through that giant human wall, and Apple confidently replies that he'll do it no matter what. He quickly realizes raw strength alone won't get him past this absolute beast, since he needs a completely different approach. The blonde starts channeling his glowing blue energy directly into his spear. Determined to end this clash with his ultimate technique, he charges ahead like a bullet, launching a brutal frontal strike at Kyle, who braces himself firmly behind his shield. Kyle holds his ground against the massive impact of the glowing spear, sending his cheering teammates into a state of absolute awe. But wait, Apple just cracks a smug grin, murmuring that having the giant block him was the plan all along. He immediately unleashes an endless, rapid-fire barrage of heavy strikes right against Kyle's shield, determined to shatter his guard through relentless force. Kyle grinds his teeth, wondering how a kid Damian's age can possibly possess such an absurd level of power. Kyle spits out a bitter curse as the kid's relentless, overwhelming force finally shatters his shield guard completely. Apple masterfully spins his spear in midair before letting out a loud shout, declaring to everyone that this match is officially over. Kyle groans in agony as the devastating follow-up attack connects cleanly, sending his massive body flying backward. But at the absolute last second, Damian swoops in like lightning to cover his fallen comrade with his wooden shield. A loud, violent crash echoes across the yard as Apple's weapon slams directly into Damian's firm defense. Our vanguard leader locks eyes with his blonde rival, staring him down with an icy glare that shows zero fear. Apple instantly recognizes the young commander, flashing a satisfied smirk as he calls out Damian's name for everyone to hear. But right at the absolute peak of their intense standoff, the sharp, piercing blast of the instructor's whistle suddenly echoes across the arena. Both Kyle and Damian stand there in utter shock at the sudden stoppage, looking confusedly toward the high tower. The announcer declares that time has officially run out, handing the third platoon a loss for failing to secure the flag. Gasping for air, Apple silently curses his luck, never expecting that giant to hold out long enough to ruin his easy win. Damian quickly approaches, asking if Kyle is doing okay after that heavy blow, and the big guy just hangs his head, muttering that he is fine. Damian suggests he sit out the next round, but Kyle firmly refuses, insisting that nothing is broken and he is ready to fight. Damian warns them seriously that they still have 2 weeks of brutal training left, and getting injured now will only halt his growth. Damian orders him to focus on guarding the main flag, making Kyle smirk as he realizes his leader is just acting tough to save face. Kyle promises with full confidence that nobody will get near his flag, urging Damian to go ahead and obliterate their rivals. The drill instructor orders both teams to switch positions, warning the first platoon to get ready for their upcoming offensive round. Gathering his exhausted squad, Damian declares that, since they are attacking this round, he wants to end the match in absolute record time. With a look of pure, icy determination, Damian sets a bold target in his mind, finishing this whole fight in under 5 minutes. His mana begins to glow, swirling mysteriously and menacingly around his body. Positioning himself at the very front, he prepares to lead the charge. Across the field, Gerard and Apple assemble their defensive lines with shields locked, bracing for the inevitable collision. Damian strides ahead, oozing complete confidence. Gripping the red flag, completely focused on capturing the enemy base perfectly on schedule. Look at this tension, both lines staring each other down in total silence, just waiting for the signal to explode. Scanning the area one last time before advancing, Damian realizes this is the absolute final showdown of the entire military tournament. He reflects on how he has already proven his supreme value and tactical genius as a rookie leader throughout every single battle so far. Our protagonist knows the time has come to leave a permanent mark on the minds of the training officers. Flashing a sharp, determined grin, he makes a silent vow to engrave Damian as an absolute, untouchable legend in this training camp. Crushing Apple's third platoon right here will secure his position as the undisputed top recruit of this entire facility once and for all. Watching closely from the opposite side, Apple analyzes his movements and assumes the protagonist will play defense to conserve his power. He concludes in his mind that a face-to-face showdown with the young blonde prodigy is going to be completely unavoidable now. As the spectating officers roar with excitement, the green light is given for both offense and defense, and this epic tournament finals round officially begins. Damian orders his squad to go all out from the very first second, yelling for them to stay focused and follow his lead. Their enemies are instantly terrified by the first platoon's ridiculous charging speed, especially seeing how their formation stays completely unbreakable. Gerard instantly senses the overwhelming power of the unit led by Damian, screaming to raise shields and track Damian's movements with total focus. But Damian just glides low past them with insane speed and agility, knowing that any defensive line they throw up is completely pointless. And here's where he pulls out something crazy, channeling intense purple energy into his spear to shatter their defense. Leaping high, he unleashes a devastating airborne strike, crashing down furiously upon the third platoon's front rank. An enemy soldier screams in sheer panic as the tip of Damian's spear tears straight through his heavy wooden shield like paper. Showing off incredible athletic skill, our hero delivers a brutal sweeping strike that knocks down several defenders, ripping their line wide open. Capitalizing on the chaos in the enemy line, he yells at the top of his lungs, telling his team to push forward without mercy. The defenders scream out in desperation, trying to hold the line, but their barrier has already been completely torn to shreds. A desperate enemy soldier charges spear first, crying out that they absolutely have to take down Damian, no matter the cost. Damian dodges the incoming thrust with effortless grace, executing a clean, low flip right across the dirt floor. With a genius defensive technique, he uses his spear to trap and disarm 3 separate opponents who tried to rush him at once. Our protagonist follows up with a lightning-fast leg sweep, sending the trio crashing to the ground where they groan in absolute agony. He springs up quickly, yelling out, telling his squad to stay tight and keep pushing forward under his direct leadership. Kyle chuckles confidently as the attackers close in, slamming his massive shield forward with an incredibly heavy, bone-rattling crunch. Gerard stands in complete shock at the ridiculous speed of Damian's charge, realizing that Damian is the primary threat they need to shut down at all costs. Staring with deep intensity, Apple locks his gaze onto Damian, knowing that taking him out is the only way to guarantee their victory. The young prodigy tells his captain to stay back and guard their blue flag, while he charges forward to stop Damian himself. Gerard watches his ally run off with deep worry, hating that he must rely entirely on such a green recruit during this critical moment. Damian silently tracks Apple's rapid approach, knowing in his heart that this is going to be the ultimate, deciding battle of the whole tournament. The blonde takes his stance, unleashing the same heavy, commanding aura that would one day define the legendary Grand General Apple Vanstriel. Screaming their battle cries, both of them leap forward and violently slam their spears together mid-air with intense power. Damian stares his opponent down up close, knowing this is his absolute best shot to test himself against a true prodigy. Slamming his weapon down, the proa instantly reads the play, realizing that first charge from Apple Vanstriel was just a clever feint. Seeing through the trick, Damian smirks confidently and resets his guard just in time to catch the real strike coming next. Apple Vanstriel drops down immediately, bringing his spear crashing down from above, declaring this will be the hit that ends the duel. An absolute massive clash, sending visible shockwaves rippling through the air as their weapons smash together dead in the center of the training field. Damian stops the deadly strike effortlessly, leaving the young blonde prodigy completely wide-eyed at this insane display of raw power. Apple Vanstriel scrambles backward to create some distance, but freezes in pure shock. The wooden tip of his weapon is completely shattered. As his spear begins glowing with a heavy surge of purple magic, Damian looks at Apple Vanstriel, telling him to get serious. The proa lunges straight at his blonde rival, warning him that he is about to go all out with everything he has got. And here's the scary part. Damian's spear comes down fast, packed with purple magic energy, slamming straight into his opponent's guard, shattering the defense, releasing a massive wave of built-up mana in one single impact. Apple Vanstriel's weapon shatters to pieces, making the boy realize his opponent's mana is on a whole different level. Blown backward, Apple Vanstriel wonders how a simple commoner can possess such insane skill, questioning if there is some secret noble bloodline in him. Panting heavily, he glares at the proa, trying to understand how someone so young can control his mana flow this perfectly. Panic sets in as he realizes he has run straight into an absolute brick wall of power in a basic recruit's field. Damian walks slowly toward his beaten opponent, calmly telling him that it is time to end this little match. Readying the final blow, the proa declares out loud that his rival does not stand a single chance of blocking this hit. The heavy blow hits Apple Vanstriel, dropping the third platoon's top genius for good. Apple Vanstriel gets thrown completely backward by the shockwave, rolling helplessly across the dusty arena floor. Stuck on the floor and completely unable to get back up, the battered blonde groans in pain, still unable to accept this sudden, massive defeat. Not wasting a single second, Damian sprints straight toward where the rival's blue flag is planted. Down and out, unable to lift a finger to stop him, the defeated blonde can only watch with fire in his eyes. Realizing his team is about to lose their flag, look at that speed. Damian reaches out and firmly grabs the enemy blue flag, declaring this intense training battle officially over. The announcer screams, officially declaring a massive victory for the first platoon. Damian celebrates, raising the blue flag high, while down on the ground, Apple Vanstriel bites his lip in pure frustration over losing this fight. Quietly, Damian starts walking back toward his rival, who is still sitting on the ground gasping for air. Offering a hand to help him up, Damian praises the fight while Apple Vanstriel promises he will win next time. The proa smiles, suggesting they fight on the same side next time, humbly admitting he is not sure he could win a rematch. Apple Vanstriel looks up, clearly caught off guard by such a humble attitude from the very guy who just crushed him in battle. The blonde grins, telling him to stop being so modest, as Damian silently wonders if this loss will make his rival even more dangerous down the road. But he quickly shakes off the thought right now. All that matters is enjoying this huge win with his crew. Watching from afar, the instructors note the celebration, fully planning to keep the pressure high over their final 2 weeks of intense training. The veteran instructor, Lean Hark, smiles quietly at the celebration, deciding that for today, he can let them enjoy some peace and quiet. He knows these young recruits have fully earned this moment to enjoy the sweet taste of a hard-fought victory. At the celebratory feast, Kyle's jaw hits the floor as the cooks bring out giant platters of juicy, high-grade meats. The recruits cheer wildly at the feast, agreeing that every drop of sweat they shed during the tournament was completely worth it. Damian smiles, watching his hungry crew and totally understanding their excitement, knowing it is not every day they get to feast on this much meat. He looks around for Leon Hark and sighs. Noticing his former master already left, he wishes they could have talked a bit longer. Suddenly, an instructor walks over holding a plate. He asks to sit next to Damian, who politely agrees and welcomes him over. The sergeant asks if he is still turning down the massive offer Leon Hark made yesterday. Without hesitation, Damian confirms he is, smiling calmly. The instructor sighs at that firm answer, pointing out that he just walked away from a remarkably rare opportunity. With a casual, mysterious chuckle, the officer leans in. He asks the boy if he heard the latest piece of camp gossip. He reveals that Leon Hark extended that exact same recommendation to Apple, wanting the young prodigy in the kingdom's elite knight order. Damon listens with total composure. He simply answers that he respects his friend's choice, since everyone is free to choose their own path. The sergeant bursts out laughing at the protagonist's unusually mature attitude, joking that Damon is honestly a pretty boring kid for his age. He admits his main goal was trying to change the boy's mind about joining the order, but he quickly realizes Damon's resolve is unshakable. The officer stands up, raising his drink high as he calls out to get the attention of every single recruit for an announcement. He praises their intense effort over the past 2 weeks, telling them to rest well tonight before brutal training kicks off tomorrow. Raising their cups and shouting with pure hype, the recruits cheer in unison, raising a massive toast to the absolute glory of the entire kingdom. And just like that, the camp enters its third and final week. Ready to see who makes the cut? The young recruits train hard under the instructor, who roars out orders for faster, stronger, and far more precise spear strikes. Watching them practice, Damon notices the recruits' posture and focus have shifted in a pretty massive way over the last few days. He happily realizes the entire camp has leveled up, and that the recent tournament served as a powerful motivator for everyone. Soon, the instructor calls for a break, giving the exhausted squad a quick 5-minute breather right there on the field. Sweat-drenched and completely exhausted from practice, Kyle walks over to Damon and asks if he heard the massive rumor going around. Kyle reveals that the 4th Platoon's morale completely tanked after losing, and a bunch of their soldiers are quitting the army for good. He says their leader ran away as soon as the tournament finished, letting out a loud, mocking laugh at his rival's incredibly cowardly retreat. Damon lightly pats his friend on the back, warning that other units' drama is not their main concern right now. He explains that, although their squad did great overall, Kyle needs to focus entirely on locking in his own individual graduation score. Damon reminds him that while everyone wants a cushy job at the palace, only 30 out of the 160 recruits will make it. He warns that the actual competition is so fierce that only a single third of those final 30 will truly land the job. Kyle seriously agrees that things are going to be brutal, knowing almost everyone enlisted with that exact objective. Suddenly, he grabs Damon by the collar, desperately asking if the protagonist is also aiming for that same royal palace role. Damon quickly calms him down, telling him he has no interest in the palace, which shocks Kyle since Damon's perfect score would easily guarantee the job. The protagonist asks if his friend actually wants a boring desk job, warning he would be locked inside all day with zero excitement. Kyle admits that sounds pretty suffocating, but wonders why Damon would skip out on what's easily considered the absolute best assignment in the entire kingdom. Damon laughs, telling Kyle that an energetic training maniac like him would literally die of pure boredom inside of a single month. Kyle laughs, admitting that is totally true, before curiously asking which unit Damon actually plans to join instead. Then comes the real shocker. Damon casually announces he is joining the feared Neo-Calit's unit, instantly terrifying everyone. Hearing that terrifying name, Kyle goes into a full panic, screaming to the crowd that Damon has completely lost his mind. Tired of the annoying drama, Damon shuts the big guy up with a sharp, painful kick straight to his shin. Kyle rubs his aching leg on the grass, grinning, as he tells the protagonist that his secret suspicion about him was just proven right. He laughs loudly, calling Damon a complete and total lunatic, which is honestly exactly why they get along so well. Soon, their break ends, and the instructor yells that training is resuming, noting they just lost their best candidate for a cushy office job. Soon, Raymond steps onto the platform in front of the lined-up recruits, praising the massive effort they put in over the entire past month. Damon watches thoughtfully. It is hard to believe graduation day is finally here, feeling like they enlisted only yesterday. Instructor Raymond says he is rooting for their futures, asking them to keep working hard for the kingdom after they leave. Right then, Raymond calls out Damian's name, instantly snapping the young man back to reality to focus on the ceremony. The order to stand at attention rings out, and every recruit salutes the commander, shouting for the kingdom's glory. Raymond officially brings the ceremony to a close and announces he is about to name the top 5 elite recruits. Tension builds as the recruits wait to hear who managed to grab the top spot in the rankings. First up is the 1st platoon leader, Damian, who answers instantly while celebrating his massive victory on the inside. Next, Apple is called, stepping forward with a very serious look to accept his spot. Then comes Kyle, Gerard, and Alex, rounding out the top 5 recruits who managed to dominate the entire training program. Rayman orders the 5 of them to follow him, announcing a special reward. Every single one of them gets to choose a piece of gear directly from the armory. Raymond explains they can take whatever they want, and as the top graduate, Damian gets to go first. Damian politely responds, but secretly, seriously, you would be hyped too, because this is the exact moment he wanted most. Stepping into the dimly lit room, Damian is pretty impressed by how organized this armory is. He scans a few random vials, wondering if there are some hidden treasures tucked away in here. Finding absolutely nothing strange, our boy decides to skip any useless distractions and go straight for his real target. He steps forward, knowing the exact spot where his prize is hidden. He has had his eyes locked on it since he walked in. Damian reaches up to a high shelf, finally grasping the one thing he came for. He holds the exact ring his ally mentioned. This unique item grants temporary invisibility, once you channel mana into it. Since the other recruits cannot use mana yet, they would completely ignore a tiny ring like this. But he remembers there is one massive exception among them. Right as the instructor calls out for Apple to enter the armory next, Damian recalls that in his previous life, Apple claimed this exact ring because he could already feel its energy using his own mana. So now we have to wonder what kind of wild item will his rival grab with the ring gone. To his absolute shock, Apple exits the room incredibly fast, holding a small item in his hands. Damian wonders if his rival chose beforehand, but the moment he catches a glimpse of the object, his jaw drops in pure disbelief. Kyle notices the strange reaction and asks what is wrong, but Damian quickly brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Still, our main character is absolutely certain he recognizes that mysterious seal Apple is carrying out. The seal bears the crest of an empire that fell ages ago, finally explaining the mystery behind how Apple learned to use mana. Damian begins to seriously suspect that this prodigy might have a direct connection to that forgotten nation. Raymond gathers the group outside, asking the recruits if everyone managed to find a suitable item to bring out. He spots Apple's seal and asks if he picked it knowing its true nature, but the boy replies that he simply felt a strange holy power inside it. Raymond smiles, confirming it is indeed a protection seal that wards off bad luck. Next, the instructor praises the incredible spear Alex selected, alongside the master-crafted shield that Kyle managed to grab. But looking at the top recruit's choice, Raymond frowns and asks Damian if he is truly sure about his decision. He explains that the ring is just a cheap trinket that slightly reduces body weight, leaving our main character looking highly confused. The instructor asks if Damian chose it blindly, suggesting he slide it onto his finger right now to test its effects. Damian feels the change instantly, realizing his weight has dropped significantly, making him incredibly light on his feet for combat. Raymond asks him how the lighter weight feels, and Damian replies with a grin that the results are far better than he ever anticipated. Merging the invisibility with this weight reduction, Damian knows with absolute certainty that this is an A-tier artifact. Raymond decides it is time to head back, telling the group that the moment to request their official duty assignments has finally arrived. The instructor hands out the assignment forms, telling Damian that he needs to write down his chosen unit right away. Without hesitating for even a second, the boy writes down the name of the highly dangerous Neo-Calit's unit. Raymond watches him and sighs quietly in disappointment, thinking it is a massive waste for someone who could easily thrive in the Knight's Order. Damian hands his completed document over to the instructor, who takes it in silence with a pretty downcast look. He admits he trusts the young man's skills, but warns that this destination is highly dangerous, telling him to stay safe. The instructor genuinely thanks the young man for his hard work over this past month, adding that he can set off the moment the official notice arrives. Their brief talk wraps up, and as the registration room door clicks shut, it marks the official end of Damian's time at the training camp. Standing alone in the quiet hallway, a wave of nostalgia hits him. He is finally leaving. But a sudden shout breaks his thoughts. Damian turns around in surprise to see Apple running toward him, yelling that he just learned everything from their instructor. Apple demands to know why a guy as skilled as Damian is passing up the Knight's Order, but the redhead simply says it is not his style. He proudly shares that he is joining the Knight's Order himself, thanks to a glowing recommendation letter from instructor Leon Hark. Damian gives his rival a friendly pat on the shoulder, praising the move and saying he will absolutely crush it there. Apple chuckles. He calls Damian totally unpredictable, turning down the exact same path he is now calling a smart move. He warns that the Neo-Calit's unit is rumored to be extremely deadly, sincerely begging his friend to watch his back out there. The two share a firm handshake, with Apple promising that they will cross paths again real soon. Damian just smirks, thanking his rival for the good wishes and the honest concern for his journey. And get this, as Damian watches him leave, he knows that kid will one day become the Grand General of the Baroque Kingdom. He figures Apple might grow into an even bigger beast, and honestly, no matter what happens, Our redhead is eager to see how his rival turns out. But first, Damian decides it is time to head to the barracks and say his final goodbyes to his squad mates. Pushing open the massive barracks door, Damian finds the other recruits relaxing and chatting on their beds. The moment he spots him, Kyle yells his name and charges forward with open arms for a massive hug. The big guy complains that he thought the redhead was planning to sneak off without saying goodbye. But Damian promises he would never do that, especially when they do not know when they will meet again. Kyle flashes a mischievous grin, hinting that they are actually going to cross paths a lot sooner than he thinks. Right after that, Kyle bellows at the top of his lungs to grab the entire room's attention, announcing that their leader is giving his farewell speech. Damian thanks everyone for their brutal training efforts, urging them to keep pushing hard in their new units. The entire room erupts in cheers, wishing Damian luck and promising to meet again on some future battlefield. Some time passes. Damian walks through the camp gates with his gear packed, officially starting his long journey. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name from behind, making the young man freeze and look back. Seriously, who could possibly be calling out to him just as he is stepping onto the main road? He spots DL, the representative of the Hamel Merchant Guild, who greets him with a warm smile and says she is thrilled to see him. She guides him into a nearby office building, presenting detailed reports on exactly how his investment funds were put to work. DL explains that under the terms Damian laid out, they are projecting an outstanding return of 3% on net revenue. Reading through the paperwork, Damian is highly impressed by how neatly she managed to structure all the complex financial details. She tells him to ask whatever he wants, but Damian assures her that her work is so flawless he has no questions at all. He agrees to proceed with the plan, adding that a courier will soon deliver an extra insurance sum under his name. The girl suggests they should draft a formal new contract, but the young man quickly stops her, saying that will not be necessary. He calmly explains that contracts are only for people who do not trust each other, and he has complete faith in her management. DL is genuinely touched by his trust, quietly noting that her young investor is a pretty unusual and unique guy. She presents a beautifully decorated green chest, asking Damian to inspect the gold coins. But as soon as he opens it up, the young woman gasps in shock, realizing the amount of gold inside is totally different from what they had discussed. Our main character reveals there are over 500 coins inside instead of 300, explaining it is a bonus for her hard work. Flustered, she stammers that she must check the records immediately, but Damian gently reassures her that everything is perfectly fine. He simply tucks the papers away. He appreciates that. Even though she could have brushed him off as some random kid, she treated him with absolute professionalism. DL then asks where they are shipping him off to, now that his mandatory time at the camp is officially done. Damon calmly reveals that he is heading west, specifically requesting a transfer to that dreaded Neocalit's unit near the forest. Her face goes completely pale. Did he actually volunteer to go to that nightmare? The redhead just shrugs. They would never send him there against his will anyway. Damon playfully asks why she is so shocked, teasing that if he dies, all those business profits go straight to her guild. DL's expression instantly hardens. She sternly warns him that she does not appreciate that kind of dark humor coming from her primary business partner. Damon swallows hard. Despite her sweet look, she is actually pretty intense. She definitely knows how to stand her ground and can be sharp as a knife when the time comes. Shifting back to business, she asks when he plans to make the trip, and Damon says he is setting off in 3 days. She nods, assuring him that her merchant guild will put his massive gold investment to excellent use. After saying her goodbyes, she steps out of the room. Damon lets out a huge sigh of relief. Finally, his finances are in perfect order. Since he is soon heading into that creepy forest, he wants to enjoy himself first. He decides to live it up by devouring all the delicious local food he can track down. Damon heads straight to a tavern and starts celebrating, chugging down several mugs of drink. He wanders through the bustling city streets, happily stuffing his face with juicy, roasted meat skewers bought from the market vendors. Once his 3 days of freedom are up, Damon slings on his heavy travel pack and hits the open road. He mentally reviews his packing list and finds everything in order, leaving him with nothing to do but keep marching toward his grim destination. But then wait, what was that? A strange rustling noise echoes from the trees behind him, making him freeze instantly. Damon is left speechless. Kyle steps onto the dirt trail, carrying a ridiculously massive backpack. He is grinning from ear to ear, reminding Damon of his warning that they would cross paths again. Damon just stares at the giant in total disbelief, asking if he really had the nerve to follow him. Kyle drops a heavy hand on his shoulder, laughing and asking if he truly believed their friendship ended back at camp. It turns out he signed up for the Neocalit's unit as well, and suggests they kick some butt together. With their reunion settled, the duo resumes their trek toward the forest, ready to tackle this dangerous assignment side by side. Wait. Out of nowhere, a familiar voice yells for them to wait, leaving both guys totally confused. They turn around to find DL running up to them, panting heavily, and thanking the heavens she managed to catch them. Damon asks what on earth she is doing out here, and why she was running like her life depended on it. She explains that since their new post is incredibly far, she went ahead and secured a very comfortable carriage for them. DL even packed the entire ride full of quality rations and supplies. Damon is completely baffled by this incredible level of generosity. She just smiles, explaining that this is her way of returning the massive trust he placed in her. She shares that her guild has a very strict policy of settling debts, admitting she worked tirelessly for the last 2 days to arrange this. DL softly tells Damon to stay safe, while a highly impressed Kyle whispers about how intensely dedicated she is. Damon jokingly calls it a solid investment since she promised future support, completely flustering the young merchant girl. The redhead smirks, thinking DL is a pretty terrible liar, but she's definitely far more interesting than he first thought. He waves goodbye, promising they will see each other around eventually, while DL waves back and warmly wishes them a very safe journey. With everything ready, the heavy wheels begin to roll, and the two friends finally start their long trip to the base. DL stands there alone, keeping her eyes on the retreating carriage until it completely disappears into the dark forest horizon. The carriage bumps violently along the rough, rocky trails as they journey deeper into the kingdom's far west. Kyle gets incredibly motion sick from all the bumping and complains constantly, though Damon reminds him that walking would have been a much worse nightmare. Spotting the guards at the gate, Damon realizes they have finally reached the town of Errol, but he immediately notices a weird lack of people on the streets. He figures they are either hiding from monsters or working inside the Brunarian forest. He already knows that most locals only survive by harvesting a very specific herb called mancho deep inside that forest. This dangerous plant causes a bad fever, but processed correctly, it actually becomes the raw ingredient for a powerful painkiller. Since this forest produces most of that supply for the kingdom, the villagers have to risk their lives inside. Damon steps off the transport and tells Kyle they are heading straight to the base, getting a quick nod from his friend. The two walk in silence through the empty, quiet alleys of the gloomy village, clearly sensing the heavy, dark atmosphere of this border town. Kyle starts looking pretty uncomfortable in this gloomy place and calls out to his friend, his voice shaking with concern. The big guy suddenly freezes when he spots the massive, terrifying stone fortress that serves as their unit headquarters. While Kyle whines that the building looks ready to collapse, Damon sharpens his senses as he catches a sudden, metallic stench of blood in the air. Kyle notices Damon looking dead serious and calls his name, but Damon instantly shushes him, warning that someone is coming right toward the gate. And check this out, through the thick fog, several dust-covered, mysterious figures slowly start to emerge. They are garrison soldiers, dragging their feet with uniforms stained with blood from recent battles. On the dirty metal chest piece of one soldier, the unit's official crest shines, displaying 2 crossed swords beneath the proudly engraved name. Damon watches quietly as the battle-worn warriors pass him by, noting the absolute exhaustion and miserable state of every soldier. Head low, the squad of wounded veterans keeps shuffling along, soon disappearing beneath the fortress's gloomy entrance arch. Kyle shivers with fear, whispering that those men look like hollow ghosts, while Damon merely lets out a soft sigh. Damon warns his terrified friend that he will need to get used to it quickly, because in this harsh region, everyone fights to survive every single day. Damon closes his eyes for a second, wondering why this old memory of his past is suddenly resurfacing right now. He remembers wearing his legendary silver armor in his past life, asking his recruits what a soldier's primary duty was. They offered all kinds of wild answers, shouting about blind obedience, crushing the enemy, or dragging down as many rivals as possible in death. He would listen to every single answer in total silence, while quietly preparing to drop his classic, brutal corrective lesson on the recruits. He would smack the head of the loudest recruit, who then whined about being the only one hit. He told them that was the worst answer possible, making them listen up. The real duty of any soldier is simply to survive. Their commander relentlessly hammered it into their young heads that they should never throw their lives away, demanding that they survive at all costs in battle. He finished by telling them they trained and got strong solely to avoid death, asking if they understood. Damon smiles sadly now, remembering those young faces, knowing they all ended up passing away anyway in that previous war. Damon shakes off those memories, inviting Kyle inside, making the big guy hesitate. Startled by his friend's quick decision, Kyle asks if Damon forgot that they came here to get stronger, saying that standing around outside is a total waste of time. He nervously points out the bizarre energy coming from the base, begging to wait before going inside. Ignoring his terror, Damian simply turns his back, walking firmly toward the fortress's dark gates. Kyle screams, running to keep up and begging not to be left behind. Suddenly, a loud kick bangs from the next room as a furious soldier yells curses at his squad. He complains the bosses promised only a few simple orcs, but they ended up facing over 30 enemies and an elite orc mage. Another soldier warns that Charleston's arm is critically injured, and without immediate treatment, he faces a forced discharge. But for men sent here to avoid a court-martial, the option of a simple discharge is not on the table. They either rot in some dark, damp dungeon forever, or keep fighting inside this literal, never-ending nightmare. The soldier screams aloud in absolute, boiling frustration, saying that a discharge with injuries like that means being thrown away with no way to make a living. Commander Terran remains totally calm, ordering them to fetch a doctor and request a priest from the temple immediately. His subordinate objects, reminding him that temple fees are so high, their basic pay wouldn't cover even a fraction of it. Without hesitating, the commander drops a heavy coin bag right onto the bed, handing over 20 gold pieces to help cover the treatment, leaving the soldier completely stunned, knowing that gold was saved for Terran's mother's surgery. But Terran lies that her condition improved. The other men watched their leader's generous act in absolute silence, filled with deep respect for him. Moved by the captain's spirit, the other warriors immediately volunteer their own savings to help their wounded friend. Even Diana, the young gray-haired recruit, steps forward. He offers up his few coins. This catches the eye of a rough veteran. He instantly scolds the rookie, telling him to buy new boots instead of trying to act like a hero. Teary-eyed, Diana begs to help. He confesses that Corporal Charleston took that brutal hit just to protect him in battle. The grizzled veteran yields to his raw sincerity, while Taran focuses on getting a temple priest there as fast as humanly possible. As the messenger speeds off, Terran takes a quiet moment to ask young Diana how old he actually is. The boy quickly replies that he is 18, prompting the commander to smile and realize it has already been a whole year since their youngest joined. While praying his friend survives, Terran is cut short when the door flies open and a guard calls out to him in panic. Hearing this, the frantic guard gasps that those newly reported recruits are officially here. The moment they hear the rookies have arrived, these veteran soldiers instantly give off the coldest glares you will ever see. Taran suddenly freezes. He completely forgot about the new arrivals because of the chaos from their last brutal clash. Commander Terran barks for young Diana, who snaps to attention. He is ready to receive orders from his leader. Taran throws a friendly arm around Diana's shoulders. He invites the young rookie along to welcome the newcomers. He calmly notes that the gray-haired recruit will finally get to meet his very first junior squadmates. Sitting at his desk, the commander asks if they are indeed the new replacements, getting a crisp, immediate yes from both. Silently sizing up Kyle, Taran approves of the big rookie's massive physical build. He clearly has a solid, powerful frame. But when Terran shifts his eyes to the other recruit, he is left quite intrigued. Asking if Damian is truly only 13 years old, Terran gets a calm confirmation from the red-haired kid. The commander is stunned that he is 5 years younger than Diana, wondering why a child would ever volunteer for this unit. Staring down at the official documents, Taran quietly admits that he just cannot comprehend the youth of today. Kyle speaks up proudly, revealing his friend graduated first in their class, which catches the commander completely off guard. But Terran downplays it. He warns them that training camp and the brutal reality of their unit are two entirely different worlds. Damian replies that he knows this, which makes the leader ask why he still fought so hard to volunteer here. Cutting the talk short, Terran calls for young Diana, who steps forward with a highly disciplined response. He orders Diana to show the rookies their bunks in the barracks, then put them straight to work cleaning the place up. Diana motions for the duo to follow him, leading them deep into the freezing, massive hallways of the stone fortress. They walk in single file through the shadowy base as the senior rookie prepares to lay down some harsh reality. He explains that military ranks do not exist here, with Terran serving as the supreme leader alongside his vice commander. Diana explains that beneath those leaders, their squad's hierarchy is based purely on the exact date of your arrival. He opens the barracks. Use any free locker, he shrugs, coldly noting they won't need them long. Kyle freezes up, demanding to know what the kid means by making such a deeply discouraging remark. Diana reveals he has been here for an entire year and remains the youngest, asking Kyle if he has any idea why that is. Before they can even process this, he stomps his foot hard on the floor to drive home just how insanely dangerous this outpost is. Kyle lets out a soft, anxious groan at his tense attitude, suddenly feeling the suffocating, heavy gravity in the room. Look at the pure horror in his eyes. Diana delivers the crushing reality of their garrison, coldly explaining that every single rookie who joined after him died in their very first battle. Kyle swallows hard, totally panicked by the dark news, while Damian stands in absolute silence, calmly taking it all in. Diana tells them to unpack and start scrubbing the barracks immediately, promising to lay out the other rules once they finish. He shuts the heavy door with a solid click, finally leaving the two recruits alone in their cold quarters. Clearly annoyed by his icy attitude, Kyle grumbles about the hostile welcome, while Damian just lets out a quiet, relaxed chuckle at the bizarre situation. Kyle wants to know why his friend is smiling in a tense moment like this, but the redhead just shrugs it off as no big deal. Looking back with a calm, nostalgic smile, Damon realizes that absolutely nothing has really changed in his life. Damon grabs a cleaning rag and tells Kyle to get to work, leaving the big guy completely shocked by his easy obedience. He says that since they got assigned this cleaning duty, they might as well make the entire room absolutely spotless. Smiling to himself, Damon hands over the cloth and reminds his buddy that this is, after all, their very first official mission here. Damon jokingly tells him to scrub until it shines. Kyle groans in annoyance, asking if he somehow became a janitor. Meanwhile, over at the military supply depot, Diana is sitting on a wooden bench with an incredibly serious and deeply thoughtful expression. Deep down, the gray-haired soldier admits to himself that living in a place like this brings constant, crushing fear. He remembers how new recruits kept joining the squad, making it impossible not to form deep bonds of friendship with them. Diana recalled advising a fresh recruit during his first deployment, telling him to stay back and simply watch. But on a real battlefield, things always happen too fast and brutally, leaving absolutely zero room for mistakes. One single moment of distraction or a tiny mistake was all it took for that young rookie to lose his life. Diana knows all too well that the brutal Neo-Calit's unit is exactly that kind of unforgiving, terrifying place, ruthless to the weak, a place where death is a constant companion and graves of fallen soldiers pile up day by day. He mutters to himself that he eventually stopped caring about any rookies, knowing they would all probably end up dead anyway. Yet, he admits these new guys are really catching his eye for some reason, especially that red-haired rookie. He cannot shake the feeling that Damon looked at him with knowing eyes. But the cobbler suddenly interrupts, announcing his boots are ready. Diana politely thanks the shopkeeper and drops several copper coins on the counter to pay for the repair. The cobbler mentions seeing two totally lost idiots wandering around the camp gate, and Diana instantly realizes he means those new rookies. The man chuckles, mocking how they looked so clueless he mistook them for new guards, confirming they are indeed Diana's new underlings. Giving a quick, polite bow, Diana mentions he will be back later and finally heads out the door. Walking back, Diana thinks about the rookies and decides he must shatter their pride immediately if he wants them to survive. He knows that things like high motivation, confidence, and pride are deadly traps that only get soldiers killed sooner here. Diana pushes open the wooden barracks door, grumbling and wondering if those rookies already managed to mess up a simple chore. Get ready for this, because the exact second he opens that door and looks inside, he freezes dead in his tracks from pure shock. Damon is standing there with a cleaning cloth wrapped around his head and dust smudged all over his cheeks, giving the senior soldier a bright, friendly greeting. The redhead salutes and proudly reports directly to Diana, showing off a room that is literally sparkling clean. Even the veterans walking down the hallway stop in total shock, wondering what kind of crazy threats Diana used to make these new guys scrub so hard. Utterly speechless and red-faced, Diana tries to stammer out a reply, completely unable to explain what is actually going on. Damon holds up an empty wooden bucket, announcing that the task is fully finished and inviting his senior to inspect their work. Diana breaks into a cold sweat. Normally, rookies just fake it, but this place is perfect, making him wonder what their real angle is. He starts to suspect that this flawless, shining room is actually an elite level of passive-aggressive defiance. Right then, an extremely loud, booming laugh suddenly echoes down the hallway, slicing right through the awkward tension in the barracks. It is Commander Taryn, who walks in chuckling warmly and praises their work, saying the barracks room looks brand new. The other veterans watch with wide eyes, completely shocked to see the commander laughing since he almost never shows any emotion. Quickly getting serious again, Taran gestures with his finger, calling both rookies closer to ask if they actually cleaned this entire place completely by themselves. And they both answer together, sounding firm and respectful. Now think about it, the leader locks his eyes on them and asks why they cleaned so well when faking it would have been so easy. Damon simply answers that this was Senior Diana's direct order, and they followed those instructions to the exact letter. Taryn thinks to himself that after years of brutal warfare, he has finally learned to read a soldier's soul with just one quick glance. Taran sizes up Kyle. The big guy just needs a little training. But then, the commander shifts his focus to Damian. He silently admits he can't read Damian at all. Why would the camp's absolute top recruit choose to suffer here? He figures the boy has his own secrets. So, he brushes it aside to make a major announcement to the group. With Diana and the other veterans watching closely, the commander walks calmly toward the two fresh recruits with a serious look. Tehran throws his arms around Damian and Kyle's shoulders, smiling wide as he announces to the crowd that these two are the newest additions to the garrison. Kyle chuckles proudly when he hears that, while Damian just stands there, keeping a calm and serene smile on his face. But in the dead quiet of the barracks, a voice from his past echoed, asking Damian when that brutal war would finally end. Lying on his back, staring up at the dark ceiling, the former commander sadly replied that it would only end if they surrendered. Deep in the memories of his past life, Diana seriously asked Damian to promise he wouldn't die before him on the battlefield. Back then, Damian asked if his friend had eaten something bad to spout such crazy nonsense, but Diana insisted. Back in the present, Damian smiles, remembering he never actually answered that question, but realizing that in a weird way, he kept that promise. He remembered watching in absolute silence as Diana's cold body lay there, with several brutal swords impaled straight through his back. The agonizing pain of that loss made the former commander's eyes burn with a terrifying thirst for blood on the battlefield. He charged headfirst into the enemy ranks, fueled by pure rage, because in the end, he was the one who survived his brother. Damian snaps his eyes open in the dark barracks and groans, totally annoyed that those bitter memories are still haunting him. Realizing there's no way he's getting back to sleep tonight, the boy decides to head out for some late-night mana cultivation. He slips quietly out of the fortress, walking into the dark, misty forest surrounding them to find a private spot to train. Suddenly, he notices a shadow swinging a weapon in the dark and wonders who else could possibly be up training at this hour. And check this out, as he creeps closer, Damian realizes the mysterious warrior swinging that heavy sword is actually Diana. He remembers that the guy was a total training freak back then, but notices a pretty weird detail about his style. Damian wonders why Diana is swinging that giant sword, since it completely ruins the guy's crazy natural speed. He remembers how long it took to convince him to switch weapons in his past life. And unsolicited advice right now will only start a fight. So, the boy decides to turn around to keep the veteran on his good side, knowing the perfect moment to mention it will eventually show up. The next morning, the troops gather by a rocky mountain, instantly whining about the brutal workout ahead. While waiting for their commander, the veterans start making bets on whether the rookies can survive the day. With one guy putting down 10 coins, they won't even make it past noon. Another throws down 20 that they will pass out right away, and the rest quickly join in on the action. Kyle gets pretty ticked off seeing them bet against them, grumbling about how arrogant these older guys are. Damian just watches the whole thing in silence, finding it pretty ironic how chaotic and lawless this entire military unit seems to be. Now watch this, our red-haired rookie starts marching right toward the gamblers, leaving Kyle nervously asking where he is going. With a cool, fearless look on his face, Damian strolls up and casually asks if he can get in on the action. The soldiers are totally stunned by the rookie's guts and burst out laughing, asking if he just wants to throw his money away. Damian says he's dead serious, but mentions he wants to change up the terms a bit, immediately catching the veteran's attention. Smirking confidently, he pulls out a shiny gold coin and bets that he'll easily beat every single veteran during today's brutal training. Damian asks if they want to raise the stakes even more, keeping his cool completely unshaken and firm. One of the veteran soldiers bursts into a roar of laughter at the absolute audacity of this cocky new recruit. He admits the kid has massive balls and accepts the wager, promising that if Damian somehow wins, he takes everything on the table. But he warns that if the boy fails, he'll be washing everyone's filthy laundry for a whole month, daring him to back out now. Damian agrees without hesitating, but asks for one extra condition of his own since he's risking so much, piquing their interest. He demands that if he wins, they must guarantee him absolute free time during training hours for an entire month, leaving the squad completely stunned. Suddenly, Commander Taran steps up from behind and accepts the terms on the spot, shocking every single soldier there. Taran turns toward the gray-haired young man and calls out his name. He immediately gets a confused yet attentive response from the young man. Smiling slightly, the commander orders Diana to join the bet alongside the rest of the squad. Diana nervously questions the reason behind this order, and the leader teases him, asking if he is seriously afraid of losing to his new red-haired successor. The young man instantly denies it, stating he simply did not want to waste his money on an obvious bet like this. Taran decides to settle things, announcing he will cover Diana's entry fee himself so the veteran can join the fun without any excuses. The commander notifies Damon that if he actually outperforms all the seasoned veterans, he will get every single bit of training free time he requested as his reward. He adds that whoever loses will face an extra brutal training session, commanding everyone to push themselves like their actual lives depend on it. Annoyed by his nerve, the warriors promise to put the rookie in his place, demanding that Damon give them everything he has today. Damon simply plays along obediently, thinking to himself with satisfaction that everything is going perfectly to plan, and free time is not his only goal. He desperately wants to shift the hopeless atmosphere lingering around the base, knowing that just waiting around to die slowly destroys people and consumes everyone around them. Without any further delay, the commander steps forward, announcing that their physical endurance training is finally about to kick off. Pointing to a massive pile of heavy logs, he explains the simple task: carry one of these while running all the way up to the mountain peak. The Lumia veterans protest in anger, complaining that they do not usually do this type of grueling work and questioning why they must participate. Terran roars out for silence, commanding them to quit whining and grab their heavy wooden logs to get moving. The soldiers begin their brutal ascent under the scorching heat, gasping for breath while hauling those heavy logs up on their backs. Kyle is hurting pretty bad, sweating profusely from the absurd effort, while Damon follows right behind him looking completely relaxed and calm. One of the gasping soldiers struggles to wonder what the real reason is behind the commander suddenly ordering such a brutal drill. Diana answers with difficulty, gasping that this drill is meant to test the rookies, and predicting they will crumble real soon. Climbing up the steep slope, one of the veterans glances back and wonders in confusion where on earth the red-haired rookie went. Honestly, you would be just as shocked as he is when he looks up toward the peak and realizes what is happening. He spots Damon sprinting at full speed toward the summit with his heavy log, completely unable to process how the boy got up there so fast. Damon finally reaches the top of the rocky peak and lets out a relieved sigh of exhaustion. Carefully setting the massive log down on the dirt, he looks at his ring, noticing with surprise that the artifact can actually reduce the physical weight of any object he carries. With a broad, victorious grin spread across his face, Damon proudly concludes that he definitely made the best possible decision when he chose that weight-reducing ring. Look at him leaning over and peering down the slope, jokingly wondering where all his veteran squadmates could possibly be. Watching them, he notices the rest of the platoon is still struggling far below, and the only warrior keeping a decent pace is Diana. He watches the gray-haired youth pushing himself to his very limit with a laser-focused look, acknowledging his impressive strength. Diana finally claws his way to the peak of the rocky mountain, gasping from complete exhaustion, only to run straight into the redhead already standing there waiting for him. He takes a deep breath, trying to catch his wind while processing the shock of seeing the 13-year-old recruit looking completely fine and unbothered. Diana admits to himself that he thought the boy was just some talented normal recruit, but now realizes his strength goes way beyond that. Commander Terran approaches, formally declaring Damon as the first-place finisher. Seeing that the rookie's performance was completely overwhelming, the commander observes the boy up close, still deeply impressed by how the red-haired boy secured first place with so little effort. He notes that not even Diana could beat the kid, concluding with satisfaction that they have finally gained a highly capable soldier. The commander raises his voice, announcing that today's training is officially over, and most of the exhausted veterans collapse straight onto the dirt. He quickly reminds them that the losers of the bet still face a brutal punishment, ordering everyone who finished after Damon to get ready. Suddenly, one of the base guards comes sprinting over frantically, yelling for the commander and cutting off the entire announcement. The guard desperately points toward headquarters, shouting that something pretty serious is going down over at the barracks. Commander Terran's eyes go wide, a cold sweat breaking out as he spots the one signal flare he hoped he'd never see. The dreaded red flag has been raised at the very top of the fort. This is the warning signal for a level 1 extreme emergency in the region. Without wasting a single second, the soldiers abandon the rocky peak and charge down toward the fortress gates. Terran storms straight into the briefing room, demanding to know what triggered the emergency distress signal. They report confirmed casualties inside the forest. He asks for the victims' identities and the exact attack site, only to find they were gatherers who snuck into the forbidden zone. Frustrated by their stubbornness, the commander demands to know the full scale of the damage and what kind of beast did this. The vice commander admits nothing has been confirmed just yet, but he mentions 6 hired mercenaries were escorting them. Terran turns to Aaron, asking how many combat-ready troops they can deploy, and gets a count of about 70. He orders them to leave behind anyone with minor injuries, and quickly assemble 50 elite soldiers, ready to move out immediately. Terran grows worried as the gap between these attacks shrinks rapidly. He can't help but wonder if something in the forest is changing. A bit later, The commander stands before his fully mobilized troops in the courtyard, asking if every single warrior is ready to move. He begins giving the order for everyone to draw their steel, but the sudden sound of frantic footsteps rushing across the yard cuts him off. Damon steps up alongside Kyle, firmly requesting that the commander allow both of them to join this emergency operation. Taran shuts the request down instantly, telling them training is nothing like a real battlefield, and ordering them to stay right there in the barracks. Kyle speaks up, suggesting they can act as rear porters, reminding the commander of the raw strength they showed during basic training. The commander shuts his eyes in frustration, feeling quite humiliated that things are desperate enough to rely on fresh rookies. Having no real choice, he agrees on one condition: they stay out of the fight and only carry the extra gear in the back. He instructs Diana to hand the heavy spare gear packs over to the two rookies, and the young soldier immediately carries out the order. And here's the crazy part. As Damon takes the pack, he suddenly realizes this might be the exact mission where that young veteran ended up dying. In a low, incredibly tense voice, Diana warns him about a terrifying demon lurking deep inside the Bronzarian forest. Damon asks if it's actually a demon, and Diana confirms that this thing is definitely not some standard forest monster. He admits he wouldn't have believed it himself if he hadn't watched a single demon orc brutally crush a massive iron wolf entirely on its own. Diana notes that it normally takes 5 regular orcs to even challenge that wolf, confessing that's why he fled the area in a total panic. Damon realizes with rising anger that if not for this monster, the legendary Neo-Calit's unit would never have been wiped out in his past life. Damon carries his pack, trying to process all this maddening info in frustration. He realizes his memories from that past life are way too jumbled, leaving him with only one real option: go see it with his own eyes, even if he has to go as a low-level porter. Commander Taran calls out, asking if everyone's gear is ready. Once the soldiers shout their agreement, he reiterates his golden rule, demanding they keep their heads on the battlefield and avoid any unnecessary risks, no matter what. He locks a deadly serious gaze onto his men, declaring that their absolute priority is to make it back alive. Taran gives the final march order, and you can practically feel his anticipation. Damon knows the moment he's been waiting for is finally here. Looking remarkably calm and pretty confident, Damon smiles inwardly, knowing he's about to step into his first real battle. Once they enter the woods, Taran tells them to search in teams of 3, keeping close enough that they never lose sight of each other. The commander signals for Damon and Kyle to stick right by his side, warning them not to lag behind. Nodding quickly, Damon realizes they've officially crossed into the Forbidden Zone, though it honestly just looks like any normal, quiet forest at first glance. But despite how peaceful it seems, a sudden chill runs down his spine. Why does this quiet place feel so much like a bloody war zone? Decades of brutal warfare taught him exactly how to smell danger, and right now, every single instinct is screaming a red alert. Damon tightly grips his weapon hilt, absolutely certain that a lethal threat is lurking nearby, waiting to strike. Right then, a sharp whistle cuts through the dense trees, snapping the entire squad to attention and putting them on high alert. Recognizing the scout signal, Taran rushes toward the sound to see if they finally found clues about the missing victims. Up ahead, a scout yells out for the commander, frantically waving him over to a nearby clearing, leading the squad post-haste to the site. What they find is a horrific bloodbath, mangled bodies scattered violently all over the forest floor. One soldier thinks it is pretty weird that their weapons were abandoned, and Taran deduces the victims fled in absolute, blind panic. He stars at a massive tree trunk snapped cleanly in half, seriously wondering what kind of beast could possess such utterly terrifying strength. A subordinate guesses the brutal attack might be the work of some monstrous bear, but the commander guarantees no local bear could ever unleash this level of destruction. The soldier then suggests a massive ogre did this, but the leader firmly rejects the idea after studying the crime scene clues. But get this, while they argue, Damon wanders off slightly and spots a highly suspicious trail right in the thick foliage. The kid is pretty shocked to stumble upon the massive carcass of a legendary red bear splayed out in the brush. Examining the wounds, he notices deep claw marks on the beast and deduces the attacker had to have simply massive paws. Damon points out the creature, calling Taran over and using the physical marks to lay down his entire deduction. The commander is pretty impressed by the rookie's sharp logic and asks where on earth he learned to make such a clean breakdown. Damon lies on the spot, claiming his hunter father taught him everything. Taran completely buys the excuse, praising the boy for his excellent upbringing. Kyle is totally thrown off by the lie and whispers, asking, "Didn't you say your dad was actually in the military?" Damon shoots his friend such a bone-chilling glare that the big guy shuts his mouth and breaks into a cold sweat instantly. Deciding to call off the search, Tehran orders the squad to carefully gather the bodies so they can return them to their families. He notes that pushing deeper into the woods without knowing the enemy would be absolute suicide. And Damon silently agrees with the cautious call, thinking that behind his gruff attitude, Tehran is an amazing leader, making it pretty clear why Diana misses him so much in the future. The commander orders everyone to move out, but suddenly a bizarre, heavy noise rips through the quiet forest air. Damon senses a massive, hostile presence speeding their way and spins around just as a projectile comes flying at them. Yelling a desperate warning, Damon screams for all the soldiers to hit the deck immediately. A giant boulder crashes down from the sky, snapping trees like twigs and pinning one of the rear guard soldiers. The soldier screams in agony, his leg trapped beneath the heavy stone, as the rest scramble to spot where the attack came from. With zero hesitation, Damon yells out Kyle's name, and the big guy charges straight toward the boulder to pull their friend out. Kyle slams his hands onto the rock, gritting his teeth as he exerts his massive strength to lift the heavy load. Damon steps in to help, channeling his purple mana to add a heavy burst of physical power to the push. Thanks to the raw effort of the two young recruits, the giant boulder slowly begins to rise off the trapped man. Seizing the chance, Tehran yells for the squad to grab their comrade and drag him out before the boys give out. They successfully pull the injured man to safety, while he groans in sheer agony from his badly mangled leg. Tehran inspects the severe injury with deep concern, but Damon quickly steps in, offering a strange plant for the soldier to chew. He explains that chewing the leaf to release its juices will help dull the excruciating pain, acting as a quick remedy. The commander recognizes the Amancho herb, but warns in a panic that it is highly toxic and completely lethal if swallowed raw like that. Damon pulls out some Numoya fruit seeds to neutralize the toxins, urging the soldier to chew them all while he is still awake. Tehran is left completely baffled. How does a 13-year-old kid even know these highly advanced medical secrets? Damon urgently warns they need to retreat now, because that massive rock definitely did not fall on its own, signaling a powerful enemy is close. Suddenly, a bright red glow slices the dark forest, and Damon cuts off his sentence as a crushing, monstrous pressure descends. Standing before them is a massive beast with glowing red eyes and pulsing veins, completely terrifying the soldiers with its sheer size. A soldier stammers in panic, swearing he has never seen such a massive creature, asking how a simple black bear could grow to these absurd proportions. Commander Tehran immediately takes charge, shouting for all men to prepare for combat right now. The unit's warriors draw their swords and point their spears firmly forward, desperately bracing to defend their lives against this deadly, savage beast. With a terrifying roar that shakes the entire ground, the monster charges lightning fast straight at their formation. Tehran screams frantically for everyone to dodge, barely escaping a devastating swipe from the creature's massive paw just in time. The commander barks out orders to drag the wounded to the rear, surround the beast from all sides, and target its legs to bring it down. One warrior shouts to Helson, telling him to leave this beast to him as he charges. Helson lets out a furious battle cry and lunges forward, landing a powerful strike with his massive battle axe. His axe strikes with brutal force, spraying the monster's dark blood into the air. Helson is completely stunned to realize his strike, which normally slices right through an orc, barely even scratched this beast's hide. A squad mate screams to stay focused. Now check this out, seeing the young warrior completely freeze in terror. That red-eyed beast raises its massive paw to crush the defenseless soldier. The beast lands a brutal, devastating direct hit. He has zero time to defend himself from the impact. The devastating blow flings Helson backward, sending his weapon flying as he crashes into the dirt. Groaning in pain on the ground, Helson struggles to move as the massive beast slowly closes in for the kill. The beast raises its clawed paw, preparing to crush the fallen warrior once and for all. That heavy paw comes crashing down with unbelievable force, instantly shattering the earth and kicking up a massive cloud of thick dust. Tehran barely blocks the lethal blow with his sword, swearing in frustration while struggling under the crushing weight of the strike. With 3 of his men already down, the commander thinks to himself that they absolutely cannot let this cursed monster escape alive. Tehran roars at the top of his lungs, ordering the remaining soldiers to attack the beast right now. Screaming, the soldiers charge and strike repeatedly, trying to pierce its tough hide. One of the seasoned warriors warns Damian to fall back because he is just a rookie who needs to stay out of this deadly fight. The commander calls out for Diana, who immediately answers the summon and charges forward, determined to slay the enemy. Diana delivers a powerful slash with his giant sword, successfully hacking off the massive monster's arm. The beast roars in absolute agony as its limb is sliced clean off by the warrior's precise strike. Bleeding heavily, the weakened monster collapses to the ground while Tehran prepares to deliver the final strike. Terran stares down at the fallen creature and confidently declares that the battle is finally over. Damian watches in absolute shock. And get this, he can actually feel a strange mana wave coming from that sword. Terran leaps into the air, concentrating his energy, and commands the beast to die once and for all. Driving his sword deep into the beast, the commander unleashes a burst of energy that completely finishes it off. The soldiers cheer wildly in victory, celebrating that teamwork always wins and that the monster got exactly what it deserved. Terran examines the monster's body in deep confusion, having no idea where such a bizarre creature could have originated. Touching a dark spot on the beast's skin, the commander grows increasingly intrigued as he inspects that specific patch. A soldier steps up to ask if it might be contagious, mentioning that sick people with bad infections have similar markings. Damian watches in silence, quietly confirming to himself that this mark is exactly what he had been suspecting all along. He wonders where this beast truly came from, knowing there is only one explanation for such a bizarre, abnormal creature. Deciding he must urgently uncover where this creature came from, the young boy listens in silence as Terran orders Aaron to keep guard, while Brent skins the beast for armor. Damian suddenly interrupts, saying he does not think it is wise to use the monster's skin, leaving the other soldiers quite confused. Staring sternly, the commander demands to know what he actually means by that unexpected statement. Terran strongly suspects the young recruit knows something highly important. Damian simply nods, confirming his leader's suspicion. Terran immediately orders them to leave the skin behind so they can head back, then grabs the recruit's attention. Ordering Damian to walk with him, the commander leads the entire Neo-Khalit's unit back through the dark forest. At the post office, Terran motions for Damian to take a seat, and the polite young man obeys his commander's order. Getting straight to the point, the commander asks if he knows anything about that black-spotted beast they fought back in the forest. Keeping his cool, Damian reveals that the creature seems to have been corrupted by a pretty nasty demonic power. A shocked Tehran asks if he means the very same dark force used by those dreaded dark mages, and the boy confirms his fears. The commander grows tense, asking if outlawed dark mages are actually hiding in the forest since their magic is strictly forbidden. He cannot be entirely sure yet. It could be a dark mage, or some other demonically charged anomaly. That energy comes from demon worship, meaning anyone exposed to this absolute poison for too long is destined for a truly grim end. The young redhead remembers that a demonic magic stone existed right here in the Bronarian forest, but he wonders have the dark signs already begun to show up this early. That cursed stone only became known after a massive disaster shook the Empire in the future, making him think hard about the timeline. Damian grows incredibly anxious, wondering if this exact moment marks the very beginning of the terrible catastrophe he already knows is coming. This foul energy will only grow stronger as it corrupts more forest beasts, meaning their only chance is to destroy it immediately. Shocked, Tehran asks how he could possibly know all this, so Damian quickly spins a lie about hearing it from his father's past experiences. Nodding thoughtfully, the commander admits he would absolutely love to hear that story with a few more details. Terran knows he must grasp onto any available clue, while Damian agrees to the request and begins sharing his father's fabricated tale. The very next morning at the military fort, one of the soldiers groans as he wakes up, complaining about his stiff and sore body. The recruits complain about being completely exhausted from their last mission as they try to shake Kyle awake, who lets out a massive yawn. Suddenly, a squad mate comes bursting into the room in a state of high excitement, shouting that he has some massive news for everyone. The entire Bronarian forest is completely locked down. Even their squad is strictly banned from entering. This means no active missions, just basic training. Naturally, the exhausted recruits are thrilled for a real chance to rest. Kyle notices his friend's strangely serious expression and asks if he is not happy about this. But Damian quickly brushes it off as great news. The redhead knows they really need this break, but he cannot help but worry about why this is happening right now. Just look at this. Kyle suddenly notices some weird movement outside and lets out a confused sound as visitors arrive. The recruits are left completely baffled as the elite garrison guard suddenly marches into their base without any prior warning. The imposing captain of the Urkal garrison stands there with crossed arms, flanked by his heavily armed soldiers. Commander Terran calmly steps forward and asks what could have possibly prompted such an unexpected and sudden visit. The captain explains that the High Temple agreed to cooperate because the report they sent over confirmed a foul, evil aura radiating from the beast. Realizing Damian was absolutely right, Terran begins to wonder if the forest really is plagued by that dark demonic energy. The captain adds that since they are not entirely sure yet, they decided to dispatch a high priestess for a joint investigation. Given the extremely bizarre circumstances, The commander decides he wants to bring along the exact soldier who has knowledge on the matter. The captain hesitates since Damian is only a green recruit, but then remembers that it was this very boy who uncovered the truth. Taran knows that if he dares to reject the captain's proposal, his unit will surely face a harsh punishment later on. Making up his mind, Taran calls out for Aaron, who promptly steps forward for orders. The commander orders Aaron to fetch Damian immediately so the young boy can join the joint investigation team. The garrison soldiers march with pride, saluting and shouting out loud in absolute honor of the kingdom's glory. Damian watches the heavily armored group, curiously wondering why on earth the garrison has marched all the way to his base. Now, you can probably guess what he is thinking. Damian walks over nervously as the truth starts to dawn on him. Walking right up to Damian, the commander explains in detail why he called him over. Damian simply offers a quiet, knowing smile while listening to the proposal, keeping his absolute cool as the commander speaks. Taran is surprisingly understanding, mentioning that the young recruit is completely free to decline the dangerous mission if he wishes. Damian accepts the task without a second thought, stating that they must act quickly before it becomes too late to save them. The commander is actually pretty stunned by the recruit's instant response and unwavering determination. Damian insists he wants to help, knowing his knowledge will drastically boost their chances of hunting down that dark creature. After a tense silence, the leaders nod in agreement and dismiss the young soldier to prepare for his hunt. The commander says he will send over the schedule once everything is finalized. Hearing this, our young recruit salutes respectfully. Once they step outside, Taran asks with concern if the kid will really be fine going completely alone. Our commander offers some veteran backup, but Damian quickly declines. He prefers going solo instead. With a confident smile, the redhead explains that escaping alone is much faster and easier if things get ugly. Still, Taran sternly warns the boy that engaging in any combat is strictly forbidden during this search. Damian tells him not to sweat it, promising to use the quiet trip to gather healing herbs for their squadmates. The young warrior says his goodbyes, promising he will return safely from this important investigation journey. Taran lets out a sigh of relief. His second-in-command chuckles, noting they just got a pretty wild rookie. Soon, the joint search team gathers at the forest entrance, getting ready to start their dangerous exploration. Captain Basil stands tall, leading his Urkal garrison soldiers as they prepare to coordinate their movements. Priestess Claire from the Temple of Adelant also tags along, wearing her holy robes and a face-concealing veil. Damian observes his new companions. With a dark mage as their target, this team is actually extremely qualified. The garrison captain approaches the young man, asking directly if his name is really Damian. Our redhead simply nods, but the arrogant captain clearly hates how blunt this young rookie sounds. Keeping his cool, the boy casually asks if there is some kind of issue with his name. He tells him ranks do not matter. They are in different units, so the captain is a stranger. The captain stammers in shock. Damian smoothly walks right past him, promising to cooperate to the fullest. Talk about a death wish. Basil is outraged. He screams that this rookie has lost his mind. Priestess Claire walks over with curiosity, asking who that bold young man is and making the captain sweat. Basil nervously explains he is a rookie from Neocalitz, admitting that Damian was the one who raised the first suspicions. Claire gets quite intrigued to find someone so young who already knows how to detect dark demonic energy. The priestess decides to silently follow the young man as he walks through the woods, spear in hand. Damian easily senses her and asks if she is feeling anything, guessing she must be the team's priestess. Claire confirms she is, asking to chat for a moment since she heard he raised the initial suspicions. She looks him dead in the eye, asking how a rookie like him knew the beast's energy was truly demonic. Feeling her piercing gaze, Damian quietly wonders if this holy woman is already starting to doubt his intentions. He claims he learned everything from his late father's past experience, prompting the priestess to ask for more details. Damian asks if she saw the corpse. Claire nods, saying she examined it with the high priest. The redhead mentions he knows almost every beast in the Bronarian forest, but he admits that specific monster was completely different. He explains he had never seen anything like it. The beast was totally out of its mind, covered in dark spots across its hide. Claire asks if he learned that detail from his father too, and Damian lies smoothly with complete natural ease. The priestess thanks him for his honesty and bows politely, wrapping up their chat before walking away. Right after, Captain Basil calls out to the group, announcing it is time to move further and keep searching. He orders the men to push deeper into the forest and report immediately if they spot anything unusual. The squad marches in complete silence through the dense woods, keeping their guard up against any sudden danger. Damian scratches his head. Following the soldiers, he calmly analyzes the situation around them. The young warrior knows these garrison guys will handle the heaviest part of the search on their own. Get ready. because Damian knows the main anomaly is about to show up, wondering if he should push even deeper. Suddenly, Damian crouches. He acts like he spotted something. This immediately startles two nearby guards. They quickly rush over, asking if he found some clue or spotted a monster around there. Holding up a common plant, the young man fakes excitement and claims it is a white lotus. The guards get highly annoyed and snap at him, complaining that he made a huge scene over a simple plant. Damian's friendly smile instantly drops. He glares coldly, muttering a disdainful whisper at the guards. He coldly warns the guards that acting recklessly like that will put them in an early grave, leaving them completely outraged. He stands up, arguing that searching is their job and he only came to help, asking what is so wrong with that. The guard snaps. He yells that the kid spooked everyone, demanding he stop messing around and ruining their investigation. Damon just sneers. He says getting scared shows their low level, warning them to stop talking and hurting their reputation. The soldier is completely speechless. He glares at the rookie's sheer nerve in absolute fury. Suddenly, Captain Boozle appears behind him. With a terrifying glare, he orders the argument to stop immediately. Basil sternly warns Damon, saying reckless stunts like this will not be tolerated because they could easily ruin the entire mission. Damon politely apologizes, promising he will stick strictly to the exact boundaries of their assigned search area. The captain lets out a tired sigh and walks off, while the young redhead silently watches his leader walk away. Basil loudly orders everyone to comb the surroundings immediately and keep their guard up. Wait, do you hear that? A strange sound from the thick trees puts everyone on maximum red alert. Multiple beasts suddenly burst from the bushes, and the captain yells for his men to prepare for a fight. The soldiers size up the incoming orcs, confidently bragging that they will clean them up quickly and go home. But then, one soldier spots dark markings on their bodies, stammering in terror at those glowing red eyes. A massive corrupted orc towers before them, and they realize with absolute dread that these beasts are consumed by demonic energy. Without wasting a single second, the massive monster lets out a fierce roar and charges right at the defenseless soldiers. The captain screams for his men to dodge, barely avoiding a devastating crush from the beast's giant weapon. One soldier completely freezes up as the brutal attack swings his way. He instantly realizes the strike is just way too fast. The monster's weapon connects with savage force, sending a violent spray of blood flying straight into the air. Seeing his men panic, the captain barks out to get their focus back and stand firm. Damian steps forward, spinning his spear with pure elegance, and mocks the guards for bringing shame to their own unit. Basil takes charge, loudly ordering everyone to form a tight defensive wall. He commands them to split into groups of 3 to block the orcs, making sure 3 specific guards shield the priestess. The 3 guards quickly step in front of Claire, swearing to protect her life at all costs. Damian notices the captain is staying cool, proving he has plenty of real war experience, so he decides to make his move. An absolute bloodbath begins as the soldiers trade heavy, brutal blows with the crazed monsters. Amidst the heavy chaos, Damon hears a desperate scream of pain nearby and immediately pivots his head to look. The guards try desperately to protect Priestess Claire, but they get brutally battered by the heavy hits. The monsters are completely enraged, focusing all of their brutal aggression directly at the group. It turns out her holy magic is highly toxic to these dark beasts, making them target her with absolute fury. The orcs charge at Claire with full force, and the guards scream in panic as the threat closes in. Terrified, the young priestess closes her eyes to pray while shaking before the threat. But from a distance, look at this. Damon watches the exact moment the soldiers and the priestess get totally cornered. Suddenly, a dazzling golden glow surges around Claire, unleashing the raw divine power of a holy priestess. The corrupted orc recoils and screams in agony after getting blasted by that blinding, purifying light. Seizing the opening, the guards raise their weapons and shields to hold the monsters back with everything they have. Damian realizes everyone is going to die if this fight continues, knowing he has to step in right now, even if it means disobeying Terran. With lightning speed, the redhead dashes straight toward the beasts threatening the squad. To save his allies, he leaps high into the air, channeling a massive burst of purple mana around himself. He delivers a precise, lethal strike, skewering both monsters with absolute ease. The beasts collapse dead instantly, leaving one of the guards completely stunned by what he just witnessed. The stunned soldier wonders how on earth the kid did that, but Damon barks to go help the others. The guard hesitates, terrified of leaving the young priestess defenseless in the middle of this chaotic battlefield. Damon snaps back, swearing he will keep her safe himself, telling the soldier to go help his squadmates immediately. Seeing the boy's sheer determination, the warriors finally accept his command and rush back to reinforce the front line. The soldiers charge back into the chaotic clash, leaving only the red-haired boy and the priestess behind in the safe zone. Damian turns to Claire, asking with complete calm if she is okay after going through such a terrifying ordeal. Startled, the young priestess looks up, her wide eyes locked onto him with a mix of surprise and deep admiration. He tells her to snap out of it, asking if she really wants to watch everyone die because of her hesitation. Tearfully, she shakes her head, making Damian realize this is her first real battle, and she only used her power out of pure instinct. Pointing directly at the brutal clash, he orders her to unleash every bit of her holy energy that way to support the men. Claire finally understands his plan and nods firmly. She is determined to give everything to support the fighters. Kneeling on the soft grass, the priestess prepares to focus her sacred magic on the monsters. She begins to pray with everything she has, begging the heavens to shield the warriors fighting those vile beasts. Crying out for divine mercy, Claire unleashes an absolutely massive blast of sacred light that floods the entire battlefield. Man, Damian is left totally stunned, wondering who this girl actually is. He thought she was just some ordinary priestess, but as the blinding light consumes the forest, he realizes she has the strength of a high priest. The tainted monsters howl in absolute agony, completely burning under the intense, purifying force of her holy magic. With the beasts heavily weakened, the commander roars out that this is their perfect chance to strike them down. The squad charges forward with raging fury, dealing fatal strikes to the helpless creatures who can barely move. Swinging their swords with lethal precision, the men easily tear through the remaining beasts. Moving in perfect sync, the unit sweeps the entire area and swiftly clears out every last enemy on the field. A severed monster head rolls across the damp soil, marking a brutal end to this incredibly dangerous skirmish. Exhausted and completely out of breath, the soldiers look around, trying to make sure the threat is truly gone. The captain quickly takes charge, demanding an immediate head count of the wounded and checking if anyone cannot walk. A soldier quietly reports that 8 men are dead. The captain tells them to gather the bodies so they can bring their fallen comrades back home. Turning to Claire, the captain asks if they need to go deeper, since they still haven't located the source of demonic energy. Claire steps past the leader, calmly stating that there is no longer any reason to head further into the woods. Examining one of the dead beasts, she confirms with absolute certainty that these monsters were indeed warped by demonic magic. The priestess explains that the entire forest feels corrupted, warning that a much bigger threat must be lurking deep within the shadows. She insists they must file a report immediately to get a suppression force put together as fast as possible. Hearing this, Damian can't help but smirk. His master plan is coming together perfectly, and a massive suppression force will definitely be formed, likely including several high-tier priests. And of course, the Neo-Caliph's unit will end up leading the entire operation. The same guard Damian saved earlier awkwardly walks over, catching the young rookie's attention. He apologizes for being such a jerk earlier and sincerely thanks the young recruit for saving their lives out there. The rest of the squad bows deeply in respect, thanking the rookie for stepping up when they needed him most. Damian just scratches the back of his neck, sheepishly telling them not to sweat it, since it really wasn't that big of a deal. Walking back to the base, Damian lets out a heavy sigh, completely exhausted after such a wild day. Crouching down, he checks his heavy sack of medicinal herbs, thinking about the massive effort it took to harvest them for his squad. Digging through the freshly picked weeds, he smiles, knowing these will be extremely useful for patching up his injured teammates. Entering the command office to submit his report, he runs straight into Captain Basil. Damian casually asks Captain Basil to go teach the local herb merchants a harsh lesson, leaving the captain completely baffled. Basil furrows his brow in total confusion, having absolutely no idea what the boy is talking about, and demands answers. Damian explains that the herbs around Errol are insanely overpriced, costing 5 times their normal rate and wiping out the soldiers' hazard pay. The young recruit hands the sack of freshly picked herbs directly to his superior, hoping it helps treat the garrison's wounded men. Basil just stares at the bag, completely stunned by the unexpected act of kindness, and after a brief silence, quietly thanks him for the crucial support. The captain steps outside, ordering his crew to gather their fallen comrades and patch up the wounded so they can finally start their retreat. Damon grabs his gear and casually slips past Claire, who watches him closely. From behind her veil, the young priestess flashes a warm, friendly smile, quietly thanking him for his brave actions out there. Damon reports straight to Commander Terran to quickly wrap up his mission brief. Terran leans over his desk, asking if anything actually important happened while they explored the forest. Damon calmly tells him nothing major went down, except that the priestess officially detected some dark, demonic energy inside those beasts. The commander nods in quiet understanding, fully realizing how seriously dangerous this situation really is. Then, He slides a small wooden box across the desk, explaining that the Kal garrison captain sent it as a personal gift. Intrigued, the redhead picks up the mysterious gift and asks what it could be, but Taran admits he is completely in the dark too. But Taran adds, on top of that, the captain is auditing the gatherers, which means local herb prices are about to crash by half. Hearing this awesome news, Damon wears a pretty satisfied grin. His little plan to support the squad worked out perfectly. With everything settled and the report done, the commander finally dismisses the young recruit, who turns to leave. Once the boy is gone, Taran rests his chin in his hand, completely lost in thought over just how capable this kid really is. An officer approaches Taran, mentioning that their newest recruit is far from ordinary, instantly sparking the commander's curiosity. He drops a bombshell, revealing that the young recruit can already manipulate his own mana perfectly. Hearing this leaves Taran absolutely speechless, realizing the kid is even more of a genius than he thought. He could have made a fortune selling those rare plants. He remembers how Damon generously donated all those priceless plants to heal the Neo-Calids unit instead. The commander chuckles with genuine admiration, agreeing that whatever the mystery behind this young man is, he is definitely one of a kind. Walking down the quiet hallways, Damon examines the small gift box, wondering if maybe there is some rare artifact ring inside. But when he pops it open, he finds a mysterious blue vial instead. He instantly recognizes it as a rare elixir designed to boost mana capacity, and though he wonders where the captain got something this incredibly precious, he is totally thrilled to use it to power up his own stats. Suddenly, Kyle pops up out of nowhere, I swear. This giant always shows up at the worst times, asking if something good just happened. Damon nearly jumps out of his skin, immediately grumbling at the giant's sudden approach, as he tries to stash the vial away. Kyle just laughs, asking why he is so spooked, and what exactly he just stuffed into his coat so fast. Damon quickly fibs, telling him it is just some pain medicine, which totally shocks Kyle, who cannot believe his buddy actually fought in a real battle. He is bummed he missed the action, but Damon just chuckles, telling him he will soon have plenty of brutal fights to tire himself out. A heavy iron door slams open and wow, the crowd inside is absolutely massive, revealing a packed hall buzzing with noisy soldiers. The excited recruits instantly swarm Damon, shouting about the insane amount of priceless herbs he managed to gather in the forest. They start playfully messing with him, ruffling his messy red hair, and hyping up his quick thinking for bringing back such useful supplies. Damon sheepishly explains that since local prices were outright robbery, he manually harvested them just to make sure his teammates stayed healthy. Suddenly, Aaron claps his hands to quiet the entire room, announcing a major official update for everyone. He reveals that a massive combat force is being assembled later this month to march straight into the terrifying Broncan forest. Drills aside, they get free preparation time, which immediately triggers a huge celebration across the base. A teammate asks the young redhead how he plans to spend his very first day off at the base, leaving him quiet and thoughtful. Meanwhile, Diana quietly leaves the hall with his giant sword on his back, walking with a very determined stride. Asked where he is going, Diana simply replies he is heading out to train alone. Diana throws a quick, mysterious glance over his shoulder. Damon catches the subtle look, instantly becoming intrigued by his suspicious behavior. The recruits just laugh playfully, joking that Diana is totally obsessed with heavy training, and that some things will simply never change. Over on the dusty training grounds, Diana slams his massive, heavy sword deep into the sandy dirt of the military base. Sweating and completely out of breath, Diana mutters in frustration about how slowly his training is progressing. Realizing he is still nowhere near his target, he thinks back to his last battle. He barely scraped by against that monster, and now his limits are staring him right in the face. The frustration eats at Diana, knowing that if he keeps up this painfully slow training pace, he will never manage to get any stronger. And check this out, right as he is complaining, Damian sprints past him toward the gates. Diana watches the redhead disappear, wondering with deep curiosity if the kid is sneaking off to train in that same secret spot. He has noticed that ever since the rookie joined their unit, he quietly slips away to that hidden clearing almost every single day. Remembering the guards praising the rookie for saving them, Diana wonders what makes this redhead so incredibly special. Armed with nothing but curiosity, Diana decides to shadow the young recruit and uncover his training secret. Reaching the secluded clearing in the forest, Damian sits down calmly, getting ready to start another deep meditation session. He pulls out the blue elixir he got as a gift, deciding now is the perfect time to drink it and raise his mana. Without any hesitation, the boy downs the potion in one quick gulp, feeling an intense surge of energy instantly flood his entire body. Damian is shocked by the sheer density of the mana inside, as a bright purple aura starts exploding from his body. He shuts his eyes to concentrate fully, knowing a golden opportunity to grow like this is incredibly rare. Damian focuses all his willpower on absorbing every drop of the elixir, determined not to let any of this precious energy go to waste. Hours pass quickly in the woods, and soon, pitch-black darkness begins to wrap around his entire training spot. Damian finally opens his eyes, only to realize the sun went down a long time ago. Surprised by how many hours have flown by, he realizes the absorption is slow because his mana core is still too small, meaning he must expand it soon to hold this power. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the pitch-black dark, calling out his name. The boy spins around in shock, finding Diana standing right there in the shadows. Diana looks at him with intense curiosity, asking him straight up why he spends so much of his time meditating alone out here in the woods. Damian blames himself, realizing he was so focused on training that he did not even hear the warrior sneaking up. He asks how his squadmate tracked him down, and Diana simply answers that it is impossible to miss when the kid sneaks out every night. Diana says he heard rumors about their last mission, specifically how Damian casually wiped out a pack of corrupted orcs all by himself. Resting his hand on the hilt of his massive sword, the gray-haired warrior looks down at the young redhead and speaks with dead seriousness. Without beating around the bush, Diana challenges Damian to a serious duel. He demands that the rookie fight him using every ounce of his true strength. Damian is completely taken aback, reminding the veteran that infighting is strictly outlawed by military regulations. But looking into Diana's intense, locked-in gaze, the young redhead knows his squadmate is dead serious. Having fought side by side with Diana for years in his past life, he can read the man's intentions perfectly just from his eyes. Realizing Diana has hit a massive wall in his growth, Damian smiles inwardly and asks how long he has been feeling this way. Diana is totally thrown off by the sudden question, asking what on earth the kid is talking about. Damian cuts right to the chase, asking how long his senior has felt completely stuck in his training. Honestly, Diana is completely speechless. Who would have thought a rookie could read his biggest weakness so easily? He frustratingly admits he has been stuck for 3 months, and no matter how hard he trains every single day, he feels absolutely zero progress. Damian simply closes his eyes and nods, showing genuine empathy and saying he knows exactly what that frustrating rut feels like. The redhead knows that without some proper guidance at this very moment, the warrior will never break through his limits. Diana warns they will get severely punished if caught, but Damian just smirks, telling him they simply cannot afford to get caught. Damian grips his spear and readies his stance, warning the veteran that he might actually get hurt if he holds back. Diana grins with excitement and unsheathes his massive greatsword, laughing that a real challenge is exactly what he wants, but warning that he won't go down easy. The sharp tip of Damian's spear clangs heavily against the flat of Diana's massive blade, signaling the official start of their duel. With absolute confidence, the young redhead gestures with his free hand, urging his opponent to bring absolutely everything he has. Meanwhile, back at the quiet military base, Aaron thanks Commander Terran for the meeting, mentioning that their next suppression mission looks pretty tough. Terran agrees, noting they have to get it done anyway because succeeding will bring major benefits to their unit. Aaron nods along, but suddenly stops mid-sentence when he catches a weird noise coming from the outer training yard. The commander freezes and asks what is making that persistent clanging sound echoing through this dark night. Alert and curious, both leaders head silently toward the training yard to see what is going on out there. There they find Damian and Diana clashing fiercely in the dark. The subordinates are shocked, furious, even, that they broke the rules. Terran grabs his subordinate's shoulder. "Leave them," he orders. The man is left standing there, completely baffled by his commander. The commander realizes the truth. Diana hit a wall, got desperate, and swallowed his pride to ask a simple recruit for help. Saying he wants to watch a bit longer, his subordinate quietly nods, showing complete respect for his leader's final decision. Sharp metallic clashes keep echoing through the quiet forest, while Taran carefully studies how this intense sparring match is unfolding. Watch this closely now. The commander realizes the skill gap between these two is massive. Suddenly, Diana leaps high into the air with everything he's got, raising his giant sword, while Damian calmly sets his stance with a spear, waiting for the impact. The warrior unleashes a savage swing, cutting the air with fury. But the young redhead dodges with unbelievable ease and precision. Diana gets deeply frustrated, wondering how this is even possible. Missing his target yet again, he realizes none of his wildest attacks have even managed to graze the red-haired kid. He feels as though his opponent is perfectly predicting every single move he makes. Damian looks at his opponent's face, noting just how incredibly frustrated he is at failing to land even one hit. Diana's giant sword packs massive destructive power, but the sheer weight makes his movements way too simple and predictable. Even so, Damian respects his natural talent for managing to wield such a heavy blade like that. But swinging that heavy sword will ultimately ruin his body's balance. Words won't convince him, so he has to learn the hard way. The redhead decides to show him right now. Damian begins releasing the purple energy he recently accumulated using that strengthening elixir. Damian charges at extreme speed toward his rival, who anxiously watches him close the distance. You can literally feel the tension shifting here, but he stands his ground. He grits his teeth, confident he still holds a massive advantage when it comes to raw strength. Determined to clash head-on, the warrior unleashes a heavy strike without a single moment of hesitation. Damian focuses completely on his opponent's moves during their clash. Their weapons collide with immense force, lighting up the entire training yard in a massive flash. The tip of Damian's spear starts spinning with incredible force right after their initial heavy clash. Under the sheer power of that spinning strike, Diana's massive sword suddenly snaps clean in half. Diana panics while staring at his ruined blade, crying that it was highly expensive. Damian figures he bought it himself, but shifts his focus to what actually matters. He orders Diana to attack him again, telling him to use whatever remains of that shattered weapon. The warrior knows winning was already impossible, and fighting with a broken blade makes it even worse. Yet he refuses to quit, reminding himself this training session is not over yet. He rushes straight at the redhead, gripping the broken hilt tightly. Damian dodges effortlessly, but the young warrior notices something very strange mid-swing. He realizes his ruined weapon feels amazingly light, allowing his entire body to move much faster and freer. Damian asks if he now understands the massive impact weight has on combat. He explains that giant weapon was too heavy, saying it suits Kyle much better. Diana stares at the broken hilt, wondering if he really wasted his entire life using the wrong equipment. Damian promises to buy him a brand new sword to replace it, leaving the young warrior quite surprised. The redhead smiles, knowing a little cash is a cheap price to win his partner's complete trust. They quickly agree to head out and pick some new gear together during their free time tomorrow. Bright morning sunlight floods the busy city streets as the two training partners head out to shop. Walking through the weapon shop, the warrior browses the loaded shelves while the redhead calls him over. Damian pulls down a pair of scimitars, happily explaining the unique advantages of these curved blades. Damian says these weapons are super popular in the desert and fit him perfectly, but Diana immediately rejects the idea, arguing that he has never wielded two blades at once and thinks it is completely impossible. Damian insists anyway, promising he knows an incredible dual-wield technique that his friend will pick up in no time. The warrior swallows hard, tempted by the promise of gaining massive power under this new style. You just know he is up to something. The redhead teases he is only paying if they take those exact blades. Damian smiles as he hands over the cash, knowing the price is steep but absolutely worth it. He remembers his past life, a time when he trusted his own survival completely to this brave warrior. Diana was a deeply loyal companion and a true friend who died in battle just to keep him alive. Taking the wrapped package of swords, the redhead resolves to do absolutely anything to protect his old companion this time. Damian plans on training his partner like crazy, sending an unexplained chill down Diana's spine. Deep inside the Grand Cathedral, a young priestess respectfully walks up to her spiritual leader. The high priest asks Claire what brings her here and if the monks are truly joining this upcoming mission. The cleric confirms the news, adding that 20 priests will also join as backup. Claire is pretty shocked that the temple is sending so many people into this dangerous battle. She says she wants to go along, but the leader reminds her of how badly she suffered during the last expedition. But she firmly insists, arguing that since she already knows the area, she has to be part of the team. Hearing her determination, the high priest finally gives in and allows her to join the hunt. She then asks if the Neocal unit will also be taking part in this. The leader nods, confirming they know the forest extremely well. With that positive response, Claire's heart races, thinking that Damian will likely join this expedition too. She vividly recalls when the red-haired boy screamed at her to snap out of it and focus on the danger around them. Back then, he commanded her to release every ounce of her divine power right then and there. Just thinking about Damian fills her with intense gratitude and admiration. Meanwhile, out in the open fields, two massive military forces gather to kick off this high-stakes expedition. Captain Basil spots the new arrivals, stepping up to welcome the commander of this massive suppression army. Leading them is the highly arrogant commander, Baron Wilkes Dello, who instantly demands to know who runs this little outpost. Basil introduces himself as the local captain, but the Baron immediately looks down on him, writing him off as a mere commoner. The noble complains about this gross place, wanting nothing more than to finish the mission and rush back to his comfortable home. A nearby soldier complains, but Damian quietly points out that not all highborns are this bad. Diana finds that a bit strange, asking if he has hung out with many nobles. But Damian just shrugs and blames his father. Seriously, look at this guy. Damian just silently prays the commander's massive ego does not get them all killed. Commander Wilkes steps in front of the gathered troops to deliver his big pre-battle speech. He loudly announces that they have official royal orders to wipe out the dark demonic energy plaguing the Bronarian forest. Raising his hand with dramatic confidence, the Baron orders all troops to advance into the deep woods. Damian warns Kyle to yell louder, avoiding the hot-tempered leader's wrath. The massive army marches in perfect sync, making the ground shake beneath their boots as they cross the tree line. Diana is pretty impressed by their sheer numbers. But Damian warns him that the forest is huge, and numbers do not guarantee survival. Captain Basil silently agrees with the kid, feeling a heavy, dark knot tightening in his chest. He worries that even this massive force might not be enough. Damian follows quietly, his eyes scanning the shadows with intense focus. The damp soil squishes under hundreds of heavy iron boots, making the quiet forest feel incredibly tense. Soon, the armored soldiers get tightly squeezed along the narrow trails, muttering complaints about the lack of marching space. Blocked by the dense trees, Commander Wilkes quickly orders everyone to reform into a single file line. Damian appreciates the commander's quick decision, but worries because stretching out their line makes the group pretty vulnerable to ambushes. Spotting the obvious danger, Captain Basil walks up to the Baron to suggest a safer tactical formation. But the Baron turns around with a furious glare, snapping at him to use his proper title Commander Wilkes. Basil apologizes. He suggests moving the shield-bearers to the center, fearing a sudden ambush rushing straight out from the thick woods. The commander thinks it over for a second, deciding to deploy the Urquhart garrison there, and Basil quickly accepts the order without question. Captain Basil also suggests pushing some fast scouts ahead, but the commander just glares back with nothing but pure distrust. With a heavy sigh, the Baron shuts the plan down instantly, claiming scouts are totally useless. He chuckles arrogantly. If any trash monsters show up, his massive army will steamroll them. Marching onward, the noble coldly barks Basil's name to put a permanent end to this incredibly annoying conversation. He harshly warns that any more unwanted advice will be treated as insubordination, ordering the captain to shut his mouth. Left with absolutely no choice, Basil just lowers his head and quietly swallows his superior's incredibly harsh attitude. Out of nowhere, a high-pitched scream slices through the quiet forest as a warrior's heavy blade cuts a beast down. Another beast leaps out, roaring with pure rage. But it is instantly skewered by one of the vanguard's sharp spears. Commander Wilkes just keeps walking calmly, barely glancing at the dead monsters littered all over the muddy path. He boasts that these creatures are absolutely nothing against his elite forces, wondering why they did not secure this region sooner. But wait. Watch Kyle here. He starts sniffing the air weirdly, immediately catching Damon's attention. Damon asks what is wrong, and the big guy explains he is catching a truly sickening stench, like putrid, rotting meat. As Kyle tries to track exactly where that disgusting smell is coming from, Damon quickly tells his buddy to hold on. The giant focuses. He stares at the damp forest floor and points his massive finger, showing them exactly where that awful stench is leaking from. Damon looks down, his eyes widening in total shock, as he spots something incredibly creepy. The young redhead is left completely frozen by the terrifying sight, gasping out loud with a look of pure dread. He spots a bunch of bizarre, highly suspicious holes freshly shredded into the wet earth right beneath their very feet. Damon screams frantically, telling everyone to watch the ground because a massive enemy ambush is about to hit them. And then boom! The ground violently explodes right beneath them. Pain-filled screams echo as several fighters are caught completely off guard. Dozens of gray-skinned monsters called Moors, sporting creepy pig snouts and snake-like tongues, burst out attacking with absolute fury. Our troops fight desperately against the sudden onslaught, wondering how this many beasts could appear out of nowhere. Damon finds this highly suspicious since these monsters are usually quite peaceful and prefer to live totally alone. The red-haired boy immediately shouts at Kyle to go back up the veteran vanguard soldiers fighting right next to them. Damon digs his heels in, leveling his spear to face a screeching beast that is charging straight for his throat. With lightning-fast, incredibly sharp movements, he completely dismantles the monsters in front of him. He does not take a single scratch. He yells for the army to keep their heads, reminding everyone that these beasts are actually pretty easy to kill in close quarters. Hearing the young recruit's solid advice, the panicked soldiers regain their focus and brace themselves to fight with actual composure. With their morale fully restored, the troops launch a coordinated counterattack, slaying the beasts with absolute ease. But here is the catch. Damon realizes there are just way too many monsters infected with dark, corrupting demonic energy. He quickly pivots and sprints in the opposite direction, knowing exactly who can help turn the tide right now. Just a short distance away, the young priestesses hear the chaotic sounds of battle and grow pretty terrified. Suddenly, Damon bursts through the tree line, instantly catching the attention of the startled holy maidens. Claire gasps in surprise to see him, but the red-haired boy urgently begs them to follow him straight to the front lines. Leading the group, he instructs Claire to unleash her divine power toward the battle, just like she did during their last fight. Nodding determinedly, the young priestess braces herself, getting ready to channel her incredible holy power. She tightly clasps her hands together, focusing deeply to summon the brilliant holy aura needed to save her allies. A blindingly bright golden light begins radiating from her palms, rapidly washing over the entire chaotic battlefield. Bathed in the pure holy energy, the monsters begin shrieking in agony while the soldiers watch in absolute awe. Seizing the golden opportunity, Captain Basil yells out charge immediately. Wipe out these targets while they are down. Taking full advantage of the weakened beasts, the vanguard charges forward, delivering relentless, deadly strikes. Dark, corrupted blood sprays everywhere as the final wave of beasts is completely wiped out by the Imperial forces. Breathing heavily, the exhausted warriors scan the quiet woods, double-checking to ensure every single monster is down. Commander Terran arrives, ordering the troops to immediately tally the casualties and heal the wounded. He slowly walks across the bloody field, warning everyone to double-tap every single monster on the ground. Out of nowhere, Tehran hears heavy boots marching up and looks back with absolute suspicion. Commander Wilkes suddenly marches in and throws a brutal, heavy strike right at Terran's face. The sudden hit leaves a nasty red mark on Terran's face, but he swallows his rage to keep the peace. His men stare in absolute shock while Wilkes demands to know if he is actually leading this pathetic unit. And here's the worst part, he screams at Terran for slacking off while monsters overrun the entire forest. Terran just keeps his head down, wiping blood from his lip while quietly taking the abuse to avoid a scene. Under the fading orange sunset, the two men lock eyes in a tense, silent standoff right there in the courtyard. Terran draws a slow breath, keeping his voice steady as he tries to explain how these beasts actually operate. He argues that the Moors never act this way, meaning the chaotic, demonic energy changed everything. The Baron instantly fires back, yelling that ignorance is no excuse and they should have scouted ahead. Tehran confronts the noble, pointing out that Basil did try to suggest scouts, but the Baron refused, boasting he would crush them all. Wilkes loses his mind at the disrespect, but Priestess Claire steps between them, demanding they stop fighting immediately. She explains that the entire forest is warped by dark energy, giving the woods a twisted mind of their own. When Wilkes scoffs, she warns him that the trees now view them as enemies, so expect more chaos ahead. The stubborn Baron refuses to buy it, arguing that spooky explanations do not make up for Terran's massive failures. He shuts down the conversation completely, even threatening to report Claire to the temple if she interferes again. This punishment is only delayed, so they better do their jobs if they want to keep breathing. Finally, he barks orders to gather the dead and find a safe spot. Soon after, the military camp is safely built, surrounded by heavy wooden spikes deep within the forest trees. Resting inside his personal tent, Damian thinks it is a massive relief they even managed to secure a safe spot. As he walks outside, the heavy demonic pressure in the air makes his entire body feel incredibly sluggish. The red-haired boy realizes with absolute certainty that the core of this terrible corruption sits right at the forest center. He knows that as they get closer, this dark energy will drain the soldiers, making them incredibly weak. With danger mounting, the young redhead realizes their group has to plan their next move very carefully. Meanwhile, inside the command tent, Commander Wilkes lays out his strategy to take the long way around the edge. He traces his finger along a detailed map, plotting a circular path straight toward the center of the woods, but Basil suggests cutting straight through the middle instead, and Terran immediately backs him up. They both know that waiting around will only allow more beasts to become corrupted by the darkness. The Baron is highly irritated by their interruption and barks, demanding to know what happens if they are wrong. He sneers, asking if they are willing to put their own heads on the block if the core is not there. The Baron orders them to shut up, claiming common soldiers can never understand the heavy burden of real command. Look, even Claire agrees with them. She confirms the dark energy spikes as they go deeper, pointing to the center. Terran reminds him they already lost over 100 men today, and waiting around will only make the enemy stronger. Captain Basil joins in, urging the Baron to listen to the priestess and strike the source without delay. Wilkes snaps back, saying that a reckless march is suicide and he will not waste his troops. He yells out in a fury, demanding to know if they dare accuse him of cruelty, before stating that dying for the king is a high honor. Wilkes abruptly stops talking when he spots another commander in the room politely raising a hand to speak up. Commander Heron smoothly suggests that a direct strike will bring an incredibly fast victory and endless glory to the Baron. He plays him perfectly, arguing a fast victory will prove his absolute genius. Fooled by the sweet talk, the arrogant Baron completely flips his strategy, choosing to march straight into the heart of the forest. Tehran and Basil watch in complete silence, utterly disgusted by their commander's shallow pride and sheer foolishness. With a loud, demanding roar, the Baron orders every single soldier to pack up and march toward the center. Tehran walks right out of the command tent, heading straight back to where his own squad is waiting. He tells his second-in-command that they are diving straight into the deep woods, where the source of all this evil hides. Vex starts to question the decision, but Damian quickly cuts in to ask about their formation and positioning. The warrior snaps at the kid for interrupting, but Captain Tan steps in and says it is fine. Then Commander Tehran drops a bomb. Their penal unit is heading straight to the deadly vanguard. The red-haired boy suggests sending out a small scout team, and the captain actually loves the idea. Showing some serious backbone, the young recruit volunteers right then and there to join the team. Vex is furious at his nerve and asks if he has lost it, telling him to shut up and obey. Damian fires back, saying he is the fastest here, knows these woods well, and has perfect eyes for scouting. Watching the kid stand his ground, Tehran realizes this young recruit is definitely no ordinary guy. He glances over at Captain Basil, well aware that this small recruit can already manipulate mana. Tehran actually gives the green light, shocking Vex. But the commander insists on one pretty major condition. He warns the red-haired kid that he won't be leading, and someone else will command the group. Tehran calls out Vex, who snaps to attention and accepts the job of leading the scout team. The commander orders him to grab the kid, assemble the scouts, and head out on the double. Vex objects, arguing that the kid has literally zero combat experience, but Tehran says that is exactly why Vex is leading. He also orders Damian to ditch his spear and grab a broadsword, which is much better for navigating through the thick trees. A bit later, check this out, the scouts slip into the dark, wet woods, moving in a pretty tight formation. Damian tightens his grip on the short sword, noticing the foul corruption getting way stronger as they push deeper. He closes his eyes, trying to pinpoint the wicked beast that holds the bulk of this dark energy. In his mind, a creepy vision appears, a massive blob of pure shadow pulsing deep inside the forest. The redhead suddenly freezes in utter shock, prompting Vex to demand why he is stopping. Damian warns them in a pretty serious voice that he is sensing a very heavy, disturbing presence close by. Vex and his men duck behind some bushes, searching the clearing to see what is going on. They sneak forward to check the spot, keeping their hands gripped tight on their weapons. They look through the leaves, and what Vex sees next is honestly going to make your jaw drop. He raises his hand to freeze everyone. He wanted to yell at the rookie, but he is too terrified now. The warrior and his partner hold their breath, covering their mouths so they do not make a single sound. Standing right in front of them is a massive army of different monsters, all totally warped by dark demonic energy. One scout asks in absolute panic if this is even possible, and why different species are marching as a single group. Vex admits he has never seen anything like this, wondering how on earth the rookie managed to spot them from so far away. They keep a close eye on the giant monsters, trying to figure out where this army of beasts is actually headed. Suddenly, Vex puts the pieces together and immediately panics when the horrible truth finally hits him. He frantically whispers that these monsters are marching straight toward where the main army has set up camp. Without wasting time, Vex commands 3 men to run back and warn the camp about the threat. Vex calls out to Damian in a low whisper, and the boy answers quickly with full respect. He tells the kid to report instantly if he senses anything else out there, and the redhead nods. Vex tells them that their job now is to count exactly how many monsters are lurking around these woods. To pull that off, they will have to sneak all the way around and get right behind the horde. The scouts start moving through the bushes with insane caution, making sure they do not make a single sound. Damian breaks into a cold sweat as he feels a heavy, crushing power, a scary pressure radiating directly from those marching beasts. Looking at them, the redhead highly suspects this group is only a tiny fraction of the enemy force. He wishes he had reached the 3-star mana level, which would let him find the source of this pressure. The scouts move silently through the dense, gloomy forest undergrowth, staying in a strict tactical formation. Suddenly, Beck stops dead in his tracks, whispering in pure terror as he spots something completely unbelievable ahead. He realizes they are staring right at a massive wave of monsters, stretching out with no end in sight. The scout notes these beasts are way stronger than usual, meaning the enemy wants to wear them down before wiping them out. Vex decides to retreat immediately, reminding the crew that reporting this critical situation to their superiors is their top priority. Right then, Damian's eyes snap wide open as he senses something completely off, instantly suspecting what is actually happening nearby. Without saying a word, the young redhead suddenly leaps forward and sprints in the opposite direction, leaving Vex completely baffled. The scout leader yells out, desperately calling Damian back, but the boy just keeps tearing through the trees. Vex and the other scouts eventually manage to catch up to the young man, who is standing completely still, gripping his short sword in a tense combat stance. The veteran warrior grabs the boy, furiously asking if he lost his mind by suddenly running off like that. Damian silently points his index finger toward a nearby clearing, asking Vex to look closely. Vex looks toward the spot and freezes seriously. What is that? He tries to figure out what is happening up ahead. Right in the middle of the woods sits a massive, glowing blue crystal, completely wrapped in a thick haze of dark, evil energy. Meanwhile, back at the main camp, the soldiers struggle heavily against a fresh horde of beasts, attacking with absolute fury. Terran wonders where these creatures came from, silently thanking the scouts' report for keeping this from becoming a total disaster. One worried soldier asks if the scouts are doing okay, but Taran tries to calm him down, reminding the soldier that the experienced Vex is leading them. Claire yells at her squadmates to unleash their full divine power, weakening the beasts to give their soldiers a massive advantage. Pumped up by the holy support, the warriors charge forward, landing lethal blows on the weakened monsters. Terran catches his breath heavily after slaying another target, showing just how exhausting this brutal fight is for everyone. Suddenly, Captain Basil spots a massive threat and frantically yells out, warning Terran about a monster sneaking up behind him. A giant corrupted orc raises its heavy axe to strike, and as the unit leader spins around, he realizes there is no time to block. Suddenly, a short sword is thrown with insane precision, striking the beast square in the head, saving the captain's life. Damian lands gracefully right on top of the massive fallen beast, catching his breath after that wild stunt. The boy asks if the captain is all right, leaving Terran totally stunned by the young man's incredible timing. Vex runs up, completely out of breath, and reports they finally found the core radiating all this terrible demonic energy. Taran observes the recruit thoughtfully, while the red-haired young man steps forward, explaining that they have a major problem on their hands. Damian leans in close to Taran, whispering the grim details directly into his ear so the other soldiers do not panic. Hearing this terrifying news, Captain Taran immediately calls for an emergency meeting with the leaders. Inside the tent, Taran announces they located the corruption source, leaving Commander Wilkes pretty surprised by the fast report. The captain warns there is a massive issue with the site, immediately catching the proud Baron's suspicious eye. Taran introduces Damian as the one who found it, adding that he will present the details on the young recruit's behalf. He reveals the corrupted core radiating all that dark energy in the woods is actually a massive crystal, as tall as a grown man. On top of that, there are over 100 high-level monsters, including trolls and giant black bears, guarding the crystal. Can you blame Commander Wilkes for turning pale and swallowing hard? That's a massive army of high-level beasts. Basil suggests retreating for everyone's safety, but the proud Baron gets incredibly angry at the mere thought of running from wild beasts. Basil yells back, snapping that a single black bear takes at least 10 elite soldiers to defeat in battle. The Baron flies into a rage over the disrespect, but the captain fires right back, saying the noble simply does not understand how bad things are. Basil reminds him that corruption massively boosts these beasts' strength, especially when they are already struggling with simple goblins. Completely unhinged and with no real argument left, the furious Baron draws his sharp sword, pointing it directly at the captain's chin. He yells with pure hatred, claiming the entire struggle is solely due to the absolute weakness and incompetence of the garrison soldiers. He threatens to decapitate the captain if he dares utter one more word questioning the Baron's absolute authority in this tent. He barks at Damian, asking if this info is real. And this young red-haired recruit swears on his own life that every single word is the absolute truth. Hemeren falls completely silent for a long moment, deeply processing the dangerous report he just received. Damian tries to pitch a safer strategy, warning that a direct clash means total annihilation, but Hemeren cuts him off. Absolutely no retreat. Baron Wilkes coldly declares they must finish this job, no matter what. Captain Taran and Basil watch their commander's stubbornness with growing dread. Knowing how suicidal this plan is, Damian speaks up, insisting there is actually a pretty solid way to complete this dangerous monster hunt. Wilkes glares at him with suspicion, demanding an explanation while the other snobbish nobles scoff at a mere grunt-talking tactics. The red-haired boy explains that although they cannot stop the massive horde, they can strike before it even forms. Confronted by the furious Baron, Damian proposes sending a fast assault unit to shatter the energy crystal immediately. Can they actually pull this off? Taryn asks. The redhead firmly insists it is pretty much their only real shot. Hemmerin chimes in, asking if any other heavy-hitting threats are guarding that corrupt crystal, which the recruit confirms. He warns them that a small strike team cannot possibly kill all those monsters, especially those massive beasts that easily outmatch an ogre. He suggests they just distract the guards first, leaving the main crystal open to be shattered once and for all. Commander Wilkes quietly turns the idea over in his head, using a distraction to get to the massive crystal. Wilkes immediately turns to ask Vex's professional opinion. The scout swallows hard before speaking. Sweat literally rolls down Vex's face as he looks over at the young rookie, standing there completely calm. He takes a deep breath and honestly admits the recruit's plan is incredibly reckless and dangerous. But get this. The scout adds that if they want even a tiny sliver of hope to survive this brutal mission, he firmly believes this strategy from Damian is their only realistic option to make it out alive. A solid point. Hearing his experienced scout, Captain Taryn nods, fully understanding the stakes. Taryn steps up and announces that his entire Neocalit's unit fully backs the creation of this strike force. Basil also accepts the plan for his garrison, though Hemmerin warns that the temple cannot spare many fighters. Regardless, Hemmerin promises to join them alongside Priestess Claire, promising her holy magic will be absolutely crucial. With zero other choices, Commander Wilkes sighs and agrees to assemble this high-risk suicide squad. He orders them to handpick the 10 most elite fighters from every single division to join the team. Tehran immediately runs over to the young recruit, demanding he lay out the exact route for this assault. The captain looks at him with dead seriousness, warning Damian that he is going with them right into the fire. Damian just grins. He grips his combat spear, completely thrilled for this dangerous assignment. Shortly after, the newly formed elite team gathers in the middle of camp to prep for departure. Other soldiers start whispering and snickering, asking if the penal unit really had to send a kid to do a man's job. A veteran quickly shuts them up, explaining that this exact boy scouted the monster nest and drew up the actual plan. Vice Commander Berto suddenly steps in, fiercely scolding the noisy gossipers. He warns them they are heading into a meat grinder. As the guards apologize, Berto stares at Damian, thinking the kid looks awfully familiar and remarkably capable. Taryn asks him exactly where they should enter the Black Woods, and our young redhead takes the lead, confidently promising he knows the way. He explains they will take a rapid shortcut to bypass the beasts, warning everyone to stay sharp on this rough trail. You've got these arrogant nobles scoffing at his warning, absolutely refusing to take advice from a kid. No time for fools. Damian ignores them, focusing entirely on the ticking clock. He bolts. Damian dashes at absolute blazing speed, leaving the elite fighters gasping in shock. Bertos yells at them to move. Are you seriously letting a rookie run circles around you? Claire struggles desperately, carrying her heavy divine staff as she runs. She quickly realizes she cannot maintain this brutal, high-speed pace. Gaspy and near her limit, she panics about getting left behind, until a firm hand suddenly grips her shoulder. It's Captain Taryn, appears right beside her and effortlessly scoops her off her feet, catching the young priestess completely off guard. He sweeps her onto his back to move faster, telling her to hold on tight so they can catch up to the others. Moving at a blistering pace, the captain sprints ahead with the priestess, leaving the exhausted warriors in his dust. Damian raises his fist, signaling the squad to halt, while Tehran gently sets Claire back onto the forest floor. Pointing down at the valley below, the young redhead warns everyone in a dead serious voice that their main target is sitting right down there. Look at that thing, a massive blue crystal glowing with malice, wrapped in a thick, swirling cloud of dark energy. Hiran stares at it in total shock, realizing this crystal is monstrous and packed with a devastating amount of dark force. Damian warns them that shattering a structure like this, without being extremely careful, will trigger an uncontrollable explosion. He spots around 20 high-level monsters guarding the perimeter, but since their numbers are exactly as expected, they are sticking to the plan. Gathering the elite squad close, the young redhead begins breaking down their tactical approach in precise detail. He lays out a straightforward plan. Choose 5 strong fighters from each squad to draw away the giant monsters. The main idea is to pull the guards away from the crystal so the rest of the team can clear out the smaller pests. Hemmerin steps up to handle the crystal itself, waiting for the bright flash of Claire's holy power to kick off the raid. Taryn orders Damian's squad to sweep the remaining threats, and the redhead nods to lock in the high-stakes job. Clara folds her hands in a desperate prayer, begging the heavens to shield them and grant them victory in this brutal fight. A blazing holy aura explodes from her body, illuminating the entire dark forest and signaling the immediate start of the operation. She prays to protect their warriors while her blinding light scorches the beasts, instantly weakening their defense in the clearing. A commanding battle cry echoes through the trees, ordering the squad to charge. Instantly, the elite fighters leap into combat, unleashing a brutal barrage of lightning-fast blows on their corrupted enemies. Damian directs his secondary unit to intercept the other monsters, making sure they cannot reinforce the giant beasts in combat. With a cold, hyper-focused stare, the young redhead lunges forward, completely confident he will obliterate every single threat standing in his path. He and Kyle move like clockwork, slicing and skewering the smaller beasts with fluid, lethal precision. Flipping backward through the air, the red-haired boy drives his spear deep into a massive beast, bringing it crashing down. Damian takes a calm, steady breath, sensing his mana pools are still healthy enough to keep pressing the attack. He spins into a whirlwind of spear strikes, cutting down the monsters attempting to swarm him from all sides. Kyle mutters that these guys are pretty tough, while Dionel warns the next wave looks way worse. Talk about a massive boss fight, a corrupted werewolf emerges, easily 5 times more lethal than a normal orc. The beast lashes out with savage fury, sinking its razor-sharp claws deep into an elite fighter who screams in agony. Seeing his friend go down, another warrior snaps and charges the creature from behind to save his bleeding comrade, but the incredibly agile beast slips the blow effortlessly and spins around to deliver an even more brutal counter-strike. Realizing how deadly this thing is, Damian shouts that he is taking it on alone and orders the others to clear the area. Kyle completely freaks out at the idea of a solo fight, while Diana anxiously asks if the boy can actually pull this off. Damian hesitates for a split second, wishing he had 3 mana stars, so he would not have to sweat this incredibly dangerous matchup. But he locks in, standing tall as he declares he can handle it. Fully aware he is putting his life on the line here, the red-haired boy unleashes his surging purple energy, reminding himself that none of his past victories ever came easy anyway. The werewolf lunges at him with pure bloodlust, but Damian uses his combat experience to read the blow, heading right for his left shoulder. Slipping the attack with lightning reflexes, he yells at Diana to run and use this distraction to push toward their target. Diana takes his cue instantly and darts forward, leaving the red-haired boy to hold the rampaging beast's attention. Damian plants his feet, spear gripped tight, ready to clash head-on with the monstrous werewolf. The beast glares back, its glowing red eyes burning with the raw, murderous instinct of an apex predator. The monster swings down a devastating claw swipe, but Damian thrusts his spear upward, barely absorbing the bone-shattering force of the impact. Even as the massive blow slides him back, the young redhead knows he has absolutely no intention of just playing defense today. Stealing his resolve, he channels his explosive purple energy throughout his body, preparing to unleash a lethal, decisive counterstrike. Determined to end things, the small recruit decides it is finally time to put a stop to this brutal fight. With a swift, crushing move, he unleashes a blast that tears right through the giant werewolf. The huge beast gasps its last painful breath, collapsing lifelessly onto the forest floor after the young redhead's fatal strike. He is completely out of breath, entirely exhausted from the toll. Damian drops to his knees in the dirt, leaning heavily on his sword. Gathering whatever strength he has left, the boy yells to the temple group that now is their chance. Hearing the young recruit, Commander Hemeren moves immediately, locking his focus onto the large blue crystal. He lunges forward at high speed, pouring every ounce of his physical strength into this decisive attack. Gathering an insane amount of destructive force into his fist, Hemeren gets ready to strike. He lands a crushing punch against the crystal, triggering a blinding explosion of holy light right there. The massive flash of light sweeps across the clearing, making the forest ground beneath them shake with raw force. Then, a deep, obvious crack begins spreading across the surface of the massive crystal. Seeing the damage, the elite soldiers cheer in relief, believing they finally won this battle. But wait, look at his face. Hemeren freezes in terror as a sudden dark blast hits him. The commander gets thrown backward, coughing up blood from the heavy impact, leaving Priestess Claire in absolute panic, while Terran and the other warriors freeze up completely, breaking into a cold sweat. A terrifying amount of dark, corrupted energy starts bursting uncontrollably out of the crystal's cracks. Damian's eyes widen in pure dread as he realizes the crystal's evil power has gone completely out of control.